Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully, we've got something really cool to watch with you guys. So, welcome back to the Mirror Point. Reality is checking itself here. And today, we're going to dive into what hopefully promises to be one of the most controversial debates in comparative religion. Which worldview is better for society, Christianity or Islam? So, we're going to be reacting to the debate between Andrew Wilson and Daniel. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name because I don't want to chop it up that way. And so this is coming from the Modern Day Debate channel. Now, my goal today isn't simply to declare a winner based on who delivers the best, one-liners or rhetorical punches, whatever it may be. A debate can be entertainment, but entertainment isn't the same as truth. So instead, I just want to evaluate the deeper questions, like which arguments are more logically coherent, which claims are supported by history, which one of these views offers the strongest ethical foundation, how have they shaped civilization, perhaps most importantly, what assumptions are each side making about human nature, morality, freedom, and the purpose of society? And, as many of you know, I approach these discussions from a philosophical, non-dualist sort of perspective. I'm interested in evidence, internal consistency, explanatory power, not simply defending a tradition, right? So that means that if either side makes a compelling argument, I would acknowledge it. If either side commits logical fallacies, inaccuracies of history or unsupported assertions, well, we're going to examine those as well. So I just encourage everyone in the live chat to keep the discussion respectful. Strong disagreement is always welcome here, but personal attacks are not. The goal is to understand the arguments, not just score points. So, grab your coffee, settle in. Let's see how the debate unfolds. I have with me the folks who are in the panel, which would be my co-host Sophia. How are you doing, Sophia? You are muted.
Hello, I'm doing all right.
Good. And how are you doing, Bryce? Bryce Aroni, how's it going?
It's going good. I'm glad I was able to join you on a last-minute request to jump on. So
yeah, man. Thanks for coming through. You're always a wonderful person to speak to regarding, especially on topics of religion. You're very, very well educated, I would say, probably much more than me. We've had you on before talking about these things, and you have so much that I've learned from you regarding this stuff. So it's really an honor, man.
I appreciate that, and I still consider myself a student of this stuff. I'm still learning every day. I always try to find the people who are more knowledgeable than me on this, so that I can sound like I'm speaking intelligently. I don't just. By the way, I'm not one of those people that just goes out and looks at content that other people do and say, "Yeah, I agree with that. Let me parrot it." I have to validate that what they're saying is actually true. But I'm somebody who. I think I've read the Bible, but then someone else comes along and quotes a passage that I'm not as familiar with, and I'm like, oh, either I forgot this or I didn't read this in depth. So let me go back and do some more research. So still learning.
Oh, cool. That's cool, man. I've had you on the show before, and just to kind of reintroduce yourself to the audience, maybe folks might not be familiar with you. You do have a background in being religious, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I was a Christian for about 30 years or so, and I deconstructed probably about 10 years ago. But before that, I was doing a lot of online message board, keyboard warrior type apologetics, and trying to defend my version of Christianity as best I could. And then the more I was challenged by skeptics, and even learning what skepticism was and that it was a good thing and not a bad thing, my views kind of started to shift, and I realized that I didn't have very good arguments, and a little bit of an existential crisis, but ultimately deconstructed, and now I'm on the other side, so to speak.
Yeah. And Sophia has, probably most people here know, but again, Sophia, you have a kind of a religious background too, as well, right?
Yeah, once I came to the United States, I grew up atheist. But when I came to the United States and reunited with my biological dad, I was trapped in his cult for 10 years, which was a Christian cult. So that's how I became a Christian at that time.
Yeah, that story is wild. We'll have to revisit that one day.
Yeah.
It's a really
I
wild.
can write a whole book, so let's not do that here.
I know, man. It's crazy. But and for you guys that may not know, I mean, I was not really raised Christian other than cultural Christian. I mean, my grandma was the one that was very religious. She was an old German woman who took her religious very seriously. She thought women who wore pants weren't really good women. Like
some of my family still thinks that.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. So my mom and dad, they would send me to my grandma during the summer as a child. And she would just work me, she'd have me shelling peas, working in the yard, going fishing with granddad, skinning fish, skinning squirrels, doing all the country life stuff. But then also I had to go to church and I had to hear the Bible stories. She taught me how to read since I was a toddler because she was a school teacher. She was very strict woman, my grandma was. And she didn't play no games when it came to that Christianity stuff. So there was no atheism being talked about around that house. But anyways, I grew out of it, became a Jehovah's Witness. That was a whole other story. A lot of religious trauma that accrued from that. And then I became a, angry atheist for a while, like a lot of people do. And, my story evolved from there. So it's going to be interesting that the three of us, we kind of know a little bit about religion or a lot about religion and how it affects us. So hearing this debate should be interesting. And it's going to have to do with Andrew Wilson. And we know he's like a Christian nationalist. And so this ought to be very interesting. Let me get everybody on the screen. How can I do that?
Scott, you should know that already by now.
I know I should be a technologist, man. I think I got to add it to the stage. There we go. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this going, man. This should be pretty fun.
First project, we're taking the fight to these leftists. Yes. Yeah. In a state where they're originating, they're the incubator for all these leftist policies throughout this country. If you want to fight back and stem the tide, you need to support Maine First Project. Go to mainfirstproject.org and please support us. Let's get on with this debate.
I'm guessing this is a conservative crowd.
I just wanted to say one thing, and I'm not trying to fat shame because I'm fat myself, but his size is pretty big. Wouldn't that fall under gluttony?
Perhaps it could be his glands. We don't know, but but probably.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, this is a red pill debate for sure.
Thank you very much.
My favorite dentist trick for crystal clear hygienic retainers, no brushing or chemicals. If you wear your retainer.
Thank you very much, Zach, for that. We're going to jump into this indeed. I'm going to introduce our speakers. First, Daniel Haqiqatjou. He is an American Muslim commentator and Harvard grad who debates religion and politics. He is best known for his YouTube channel, The Muslim Skeptic, where he critiques modernity from a traditionalist Islamic perspective. Please welcome Daniel Haqiqatjou. Also, defending Christianity tonight, Andrew Wilson runs the popular YouTube channel, The Crucible, which focuses on politics, news, debates, and interviews, and also runs Verbal Combat, a comprehensive debate course found at debateuniversity.com. Give it up for Andrew Wilson.
That is overwhelming support in that room.
Well, it's also forced support because they put the theme music on when his name was
Right.
announced. I didn't hear any theme music when the Muslim was announced, so they're already biasing the audience for the Christian to win. They haven't even started debating yet.
Yeah, it's over before it started.
Yeah. It's almost like they should have an applause sign over his head, you know, that lights up whenever there's something, someone in the background controlling the booth.
Exactly.
He's got a marble clenched in his teeth.
We're going to step. We're going to jump.
That is so
We're going to
corny.
jump right back. We're going to jump right into it with Andrew or with Daniel's opening statement. Daniel, the floor is all yours for your 15-minute opener. Thanks for being with us.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
1 second.
Well, this guy isn't too much better.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Just a quick note. I want this to be a civil debate because right now there's a massive Zionist campaign to generate as much hostility between Muslims and Christians as possible. If I can say something nice about Andrew, I respect him for not being a shill for Israel. I think we can be civil, but also very critical of each other's religions without it turning vicious. The only ones who benefit from a Muslim-Christian civil war right now is Israel, which is stoking hate so that they can continue to their genocide of both Muslim and Christian Palestinians while they bleed America dry. Let's keep that larger context in mind. So the first slide, which is best for society, Islam or Christianity? Next slide. The answer depends on which standard we use to judge, traditional or secular liberal values. Traditional values include belief in God, prayer, marriage, and gender roles, opposition to degeneracy, and commitment to nation and shared culture. Secular liberal values include individual freedom, gender equality, sexual autonomy, scientific progress, and economic advancement. If we judge by traditional values, Islam beats Christianity hands down. If we judge by...
So I want to digest what he's defining as traditional values because he has smuggled in something there, the opposition to degeneracy as a traditional value. There's a lot of question begging in there. One might argue that that's where degeneracy comes from. So, you know, he's not defining what degeneracy is.
Right.
He's just kind of smuggling that into the premise that, you know, if you're degenerate, you're for secular values, not traditional values. I don't know that that's true. And I didn't hear his list of secular values. Maybe he'll put it up on the screen. But I just wanted to throw that out there that we should. And also commitment to nation. I don't see that as relating to traditional values or secular values. That could fit in either category or neither.
Right. A lot of this stuff seems so subjective.
Yeah. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, they're not very nationalistic, right?
Right. That's what I was thinking. I'm putting on my Jehovah's Witness hat on, looking at it and just saying, wait a minute, belief in which God? Because according to Jehovah's Witnesses, if you're worshiping any other God than Jehovah, then you're not really doing the right thing. Prayer the same way. Who are you praying to? In what way are you praying? Are you praying like in in public? Yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses do not pray in public to be seen by men. That's part of their teaching. And everything else you just mentioned, they're not nationalistic or anything.
Yeah, but anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. All right.
Yep. Good points.
Secular liberal values, Christianity comes out on top. The reason for this is that Christianity, since the Enlightenment, has been reformed and adopted liberal values while eroding traditional ones. This is because Christianity is more open to evolving in a way that Islam isn't. My opponent, Andrew Wilson, claims to be a traditional Christian, but we'll see if he'll debate like a traditional Christian or like a blue-haired libtard. If he debates as a traditional Christian, he should defend Christianity. He should defend Christianity as understood before modern liberal reforms. For example, even though he's Orthodox, I doubt he'll defend Byzantine Orthodox norms, such as theocratic monarchy, the monarch's authority to define church doctrine, slavery, book bans and speech restrictions, death penalties for blasphemy, apostasy, and pagan worship, restrictions and bans on loaning money with interest, minimum marriage age of 12, bans on divorce, mandatory veiling of women with unveiled women labeled as prostitutes, lashes for fornicators, punishing married adulterers by cutting off noses or sewing them into sacks and burning them alive, execution for homosexual acts, limits on Jews through bans on Jewish proselytizing and building new synagogues. If we look at a timeline of Christianity, for 1700 years, Christianity upheld its pre-modern norms of slavery, female subordination, monarchy, punishments for blasphemy, executions for adultery. After the Enlightenment, Christians began reforming their religion to match secular values, and that liberalizing process continues today with the acceptance of homosexuality, LGBT rights, and modern feminism. Even though he's a conservative, Andrew already accepts huge chunks of this liberal reform. He's fine with abolishing slavery, rejecting monarchy, ending blasphemy, and adultery punishments. His conservatism simply draws an arbitrary line at a later stage, roughly 1950s America. But libtard progressives follow that same reform trajectory, just a few stages or steps further.
So his point here, and I have to pause this every once in a while so we don't get killed. But so his point here is that basically Andrew Wilson is going to be the equivalent of a extreme progressive liberal in comparison to real traditional values as it's, before the Enlightenment period, which is kind of fair in a way because, everything evolves and changes, is that they don't want to acknowledge that. What do you think?
Yeah, I have thoughts.
What do you think, Sophia?
I mean, I've seen that several times that people attack Andrew Wilson from that angle. He's definitely a modern Christian and doesn't even really know scriptures. So, I mean, if you go by the definition of what traditional Christians are about, I guess he really isn't. But at the same time, he is, because he still upholds those values, even though he can't enforce them. Like, he'll sit there and say slavery is justified because it just means that we conquered people. Or he'll say, I mean, he still speaks out against homosexuality and stuff. He may not actually influence the laws, but he still stands by those values, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a sort of a good argument. I'm in agreement actually with a lot of, I don't know either one of these guys. I've heard of Wilson, but I don't really know him. But I just heard that he comes from an Orthodox background, which means he's not going to know the Bible. So, if I were the Muslim, I would have taken it further than the Orthodox Church. I would have taken it back to the Bible,
Right.
I would have said, you definitely don't agree with the Bible, because there's even stronger. A lot of the things this Muslim guy is saying, a lot of the things he lists isn't straight out of the Bible, and so you don't even have to appeal to what the Orthodox Church did. You can go right back to the beginning. What did Jesus teach about the commandments? What were the commandments given by Moses? Do you follow any of them? Do you believe in any of them? Clearly you don't, So from that perspective, he is liberal. Now, obviously he's not liberal because this is all subjective. And as a progressive leftist, he's an extreme conservative. He's just not as extreme as the Muslim. So the Muslim is arguing, hey, if you were really religious, you would be more extreme in your hate, not half-assing it. But for this audience, I think that it is, it's going to make them think, like, yeah, who is more conservative here? It seems like the Muslim.
Yeah, when I lived in California, I had a conversation with two Muslims that lived in my neighborhood, and they straight up told me that, no, the thing about you people in the West, Christians and you atheist types, y'all are weak. Y'all are weak. You wouldn't survive a day in our country. Like, you're just totally weak. We would demolish you. At the end of the day, that's what we're going to do. just through procreation alone, we're going to outnumber you soon. And then we're going to be able to cut your heads off and stuff. So because you guys are so weak, you know, they have like a very, very strong dominion theology, you know.
I do want to point out really quickly, though, that I find some irony in that the topic of discussion is which religion is better for society. And some of the points that the Muslim is bringing up for what makes society better is all these different ways of executing people. You know, we have to execute apostasy. We have to execute people who are sexual degenerates. We have to execute homosexuals. You know, that makes society better. You know, execution. So that's funny to me.
Half the population be missing overnight.
Yeah, that's like a pretty crazy PR, man. It makes you, what are you trying to promote? The idea that we are violent people,
right?
Yeah. It's a religion of peace, though.
See, and you know, we try to bend over backwards to say that, well, not all Muslims are that way. And at the same time, you've got all these people saying, no, we are. It's like, man.
I would say, just to be fair, I don't believe that all Muslims are this way, because I know a lot of people from a Muslim background too. And a lot of them reject a lot of this stuff. The problem is they would be labeled apostates or not true Muslims by the Muslims who do. You know, it's the same thing that Christianity does when you're not conservative evangelical enough for them. You know, well, you're not a real Christian. So
yeah, exactly. All right, let me get back to playing the video.
Andrew isn't defending traditional Christianity. He's defending his preferred arbitrary stopping point on a progressive path he already agrees with. In other words, the difference between him and the libtards is quantitative, not qualitative. Just a dispute over where to halt the same ongoing cucking to secular liberalism. So Andrew's conservatism is not principled, it's arbitrary. Given this, I predict Andrew will debate like a blue-haired libtard today and use a pro-liberal strategy against Islam. Because again, Christianity can't beat Islam on traditional values for the simple reason that Islam isn't amenable to reform the way Christianity is. So he'll likely attack Islam exactly like a blue-haired alphabet person would by calling Islam backwards on marriage, gender roles, and scientific and economic progress. But if Andrew attacks Islam using secular liberal values, he faces a dilemma. Because tomorrow he's debating an atheist on whether Christianity or secular liberalism is better for society.
So any just pause that really quickly.
Standard that Andrew uses to judge.
I want to answer the person who just asked the question: is libtard a debate tactic? Actually, in this debate, it is, because what the Muslim is doing right now is he's trying to appeal to his conservative American audience, which adores language like that. You know, so the more he can present himself as, "Hey, I'm one of you. I'm a conservative. Look at these crazy libtards," the more he might be opening them up to realizing that maybe he's the better conservative. It's not going to work because they're racist and they hate Muslims, and he doesn't realize that because he's dumb. Right. But that would be a good tactic if you were talking to an audience that was like rational and not racist. But I suspect that that's not this audience. So
yeah, it doesn't work very well with colonizers.
Yeah, exactly.
They kind of learn to see past that.
That might work in like some other European countries or maybe somewhere, you know, in Africa, but it's not going to work in. I can't. This is funny that this is Maine, which is, you know, I didn't know Maine had this type of. This has got to be a small group in Maine because that's not the area where conservatism flourishes normally.
And I agree with Nell. It's virtue signaling. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot of virtue signaling going on. Yeah. And all of this stuff is like they're competing on who can be the most violent and the most low.
The most evil.
Yeah, the most evil. Like that's what we're competing on. That's the mindset with extremists, you know.
Islam today. Tomorrow, that same liberal standard can be used by his atheist opponent to judge Christianity. For example, if he says Christianity is better than Islam because it gives women more rights and promotes more scientific progress and health, the atheist can argue that secular liberalism does even more of those things. Andrew knows this, so against the atheist tomorrow, he'll likely revert back to a traditional Christian stance, highlighting issues like LGBT, incest, and low birth rates. I'm not singling out Andrew. All Christian debaters code switch. They know Christianity isn't as based as Islam on traditional values, nor as progressive as secularism on liberal values. Christianity is stuck in the middle between traditionalism and secularism. So to win against either Islam or secularism, Christians have no choice but to code switch depending on who they're debating.
I actually agree with that. I think that's a pretty good argument.
Yeah, he's actually coming up with a good tactic. I'd be really curious now, because now what is Andrew gonna do? Because he's kind of like knocking his feet out from under him before he gets a chance to do it. So now he's kind of like, I think Andrew's probably in a little bit of trouble here. I don't know. Or do you think that sticking to that playbook is going to work? What do you think, Sophia?
I don't know if he can stick with it, but go ahead, Sophia.
I think he's going to get mad like he always does and get over emotional.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the playbook, remember?
This conceptual problem with Christian apologetics, how do we know that Islam is better for society than Christianity? Again, it depends on what values we adopt. Muslim and Christians generally subscribe to traditional values. In fact, all humans, due to biology, inherently value things like belief in a creator, marriage, family, and community. So let's see whether Islam or Christianity is better at promoting these things in society using the abundance of empirical data available. Let's start with...
Yeah, let's look at that list. All humans naturally value belief in supreme creator. Do any of you guys believe in a supreme creator?
No, and no one does until they're taught that.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, you're the proof, Sophia.
Exactly. And I can't even say I really believed in it then. It's that I was forced into that.
Yeah. So that's actually just a false belief that a lot of people, I mean, it's cool if you're religious and, you know, it sounds good. It kind of makes you feel better about what you're believing, but that's not rooted in any kind of empirical data. In fact, the only one of these 4 criteria that he listed that I would say comes to humans naturally is probably family. And even then it varies greatly in extent and age.
And I would argue that when it comes to so-called religious beliefs and practices, what was mostly common to humans before religion or organized religion was that all the major, practices came to the shared realization that the one thing that must be fundamental is consciousness. And they call it different things. They call it pneuma and prana and whatnot, but whatever they called it, it all describes consciousness as fundamental, not some God in the sky. So that's actually not natural to humans, according to history.
Not at all. You know, and same with family, you know, like some people don't want a family. Some people are very intentional when it comes to procreation and bringing children in the world. Some are, you know, and it's always been like that.
Yeah, I should have said community, not family.
Yeah,
because
community.
family can mean different things.
Yeah.
I was thinking like your parents and siblings, but that's certainly not the case for everybody. But what people intrinsically value is community and connection with other people. But it's typically people who are like you or like-minded, or you know, people you feel safe around. And sometimes that's family, and sometimes it ain't.
Yeah. And the only reason he can get away with this list is because he already knows Andrew Wilson agrees with all of that. So that's the only reason he would bring that up.
Yeah.
The bird's eye view, using the World Value Survey, a global project measuring beliefs, values, and cultural changes in over 100 countries. Their world cultural map from 2023 groups countries by religion. Protestant European countries are yellow, Orthodox is red, European Catholics are green, Latin America in light blue, and Islamic countries in gray. On the x-axis, countries that value individual self-expression and autonomy are further right on the graph. On the y-axis, countries that are more secular are higher up. The ones that have more traditional values are lower. So I'm
not sure I followed.
How about belief in God? Muslim countries show higher religiosity and belief in God than Christians. than Christian ones. For example, Pew Research asked people in different countries if they believe in God. For nearly all the Muslim countries, the number was 100%, to such an extent that Pew concluded that nearly all Muslims surveyed believe in God. Another Pew data set shows Muslim countries, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Malaysia, at the top of global belief rankings, while Christian countries are split, with Kenya, Ghana, and the Philippines high, but the US, Spain, and France low. What about religiosity? On this map, all Muslim countries are dark purple, showing the largest share of religious followers. Christian countries, except Latin America, are much lower, like the US, Europe, and Russia. Pew studied how important religion is to people's lives. And for Muslim countries, they're dark yellow, indicating 80 to 100% of people saying religion is very important to them. While most Christian countries are much lower in gray. And
can you pause
the
that for a second?
2024 Integrated Value Survey.
So I don't know why he's thinks that this part of the argument is good, because he seems to be conflating religiosity and culture, right? And this doesn't really help him, in my opinion, because if you look at all of the countries that are the most religious, what do they all seem to have in common? They're somewhat poorer and less educated, and more poverty and lower lifespans, and objectively worse for, you know, if your goal is to convince people that your way of life or your view is the better way of life or more prosperous, this map is not helping you.
Right. You know? Because for that crowd, that works though, because again, they support things like being rich and capitalism and, you know, a big GDP, you know.
But I think that this, see, that's why I think it hurts his argument, because the crowd he's talking about does support those things. But if you look at the Muslim places, that's not where that's happening. So they're going to, you know, his counter argument, Wilson, should be, well, if you look at this map, it looks like the Christian countries are better off, you know, not necessarily because they're less conservative, but because Islam is inherently leads to a worse way of life. You know, that's what I would do if I was. I don't know if he's smart enough to do that, but this map is kind of inconsistent, because in a lot of the Christian majority countries, people are better off. But then he even gave his own exception. He said, except in Latin America, where people are poor and they're more religious. Well, why are they more religious when they're poor? I wonder why. Maybe that's the common denominator, being poor and having less access to, you know, infrastructure and healthcare and et cetera.
Yeah, because the poor, you know, they're told to just pray to God, and then God will do all this stuff for them. And it kind of goes hand in hand, doesn't it?
Yeah, you find religion when you're at your lowest.
Yes.
When things are going well, you don't need religion. That's what this map shows me.
Yeah.
Confirms this. In majority Muslim countries like Indonesia and Egypt, over 97% say religion is very important, whereas in Christian countries like Mexico, the US, Russia, and Germany, religion matters far less. Another key metric is religious switching. Pew shows Christianity in red has the largest net loss of followers, while Islam in green has the highest net gain from conversions.
Meet Keystone, your ultimate digital asset protector.
His argument about which is better.
Yeah. Yeah. They always bring up stuff that's irrelevant.
You're pretty behind on the slides. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Now let's look at family and gender roles. Muslim societies have higher rates of marriage than Christian societies. Notice how the percentage of married individuals of both Muslim women and men, indicated by the red and blue arrows, is higher than Christians, since Christians are more likely to delay or forego marriage. We can also look at divorce laws. Christian countries mostly allow no-fault divorce, while Muslim countries often have fault-based divorce or other limitations on women. When it comes to fertility, Pew Research shows that Muslims are at 2.9 globally, whereas Christians are at 2.6. And even when you break it down by region, Muslims in Europe, the Asia Pacific, and Sub-Saharan Africa have more children than their Christian counterparts. Muslims also have the largest families by household size. at 6.4 members per household compared to 4.5 for Christians. Due to both higher birth rate and higher net conversions, Islam is the fastest growing religion projected to meet and exceed the Christian population in 25 to 50 years. How about sexual behaviors? Research in American
because now his argument is all over the place. He was doing good, but now, I don't think this helps his argument either, because now he seems to be suggesting that prosperity, human prosperity, is qualified by things like birth rate, how many people are staying in the religion. Mel made a good point a few minutes ago that apostasy laws exist in Islam. So even if people start disbelieving in the religion, they can't ever leave it. Otherwise, they would be killed. So saying that people are more likely to leave Christianity is not compelling for me for why Islam is better. If they're threatened with death if they leave Islam, that's not very impressive. That doesn't tell me that Islam is better. It just tells me it's more violent. Right. So that doesn't seem to help the argument. And these arbitrary, metrics that he's using to decide human civilization is better, like birth rate. Maybe birth rate is not, a higher birth rate. If the goal is to get more people in the world, then yeah, I guess maybe Islam is better. But why is that the goal? There's 8 billion people in the world, and there's a lot of people lacking resources. So you would think that you might want to halt birth rate in some places, that would be better,
Right.
So,
right. It's all relative.
Yeah. All of his criteria is just arbitrary, subjective, and relative. And he's not giving reasons for why this is better. He's just asserting that, this is better because we're having more babies. There's people staying in Islam. That doesn't tell anyone that's better. I don't know if this audience is
I think he's only saying that because that's the so-called values that Christians also subscribe to. So he's basically saying, in comparison, we're better than you because we actually abide by this, whereas you guys are straying away from that.
Yeah, and see, if Wilson and some of these conservative Christians were smarter, they would use the arguments that I just made, but they're not. They're probably dumb, and this probably is a good tactic for him to use now that I'm reconsidering the audience he's talking to. So never mind.
Yeah, he's playing to the audience. And this is the thing. I'm not sure how, because that's a really clever tactic, because I'm not, what is Andrew now going to do? Is he going to allow backtrack on those values? Now it is a competition. So I don't know. This is kind of interesting now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Sociological review show Muslims, due to religious conviction, are less likely to have premarital or extramarital sex than Christians. Some Christians might claim this is only due to self-reporting bias because Muslims are less likely to admit to engaging in these behaviors. But we can account for this by benchmarking against other variables like medical abortions and death rate from HIV/AIDS, which directly correlate with extramarital sex. Data shows abortion rates are highest in Christian regions, and death from AIDS are highest in Christian countries in Africa, Russia, and Latin America, but lowest in North Africa, the Middle East, and other Muslim regions. Regarding acceptance of homosexuality, Pew shows Christian countries are far more accepting, even after controlling for economic factors. Regarding attitudes towards gender equality, World Value Survey asks whether men make better leaders than women, do men have more of a right to a job than women, etc. They took the answers to these questions to create a grading system which shows that Muslims are far below Christians. Now, if we were a bunch of liberal simps, we would count this in favor of the Christians. But since we're all red-pilled, we recognize that the Muslim countries are based and the Christians are simping. Same when it comes to other gender equality metrics. Christian countries, whether in the West or Latin America, Russia, value gender equality more than Muslims.
And I notice he's trying to use these little modern Western catchphrases that are popular now.
Yeah.
Like simping and, cucks and all of this kind of stuff. He's trying to really appeal. He's trying to play a psychological trick here.
Well, I'm in agreement with you. I'm very interested to see how Wilson's going to deal with this, because this argument so far should be unassailable from a conservative perspective. From a leftist perspective, I could destroy all of this, but they're not leftists, they're conservatives. So I don't know how they respond to this.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Because Andrew Wilson has done so much work to build that whole case up. I mean, that's his whole predication.
My instinct right now is to hammer this guy and be like, why don't you show maps? Why don't you show the correlation of, nations that have the worst poverty rates or the lowest lifespans or everything? They would all be the Muslim countries too, but again, I didn't realize that this was going to be strictly from a conservative perspective, because even a liberal Christian could, should have better arguments for this, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. This is when the rubber meets the road. It's like, this is when your arguments are supposed to work for you. And if they don't, then
he's terrible. At least he's being consistent though. Like we're here to evaluate the validity and soundness and rationality of the arguments, right? And so I will say that he is being logically consistent.
Yeah,
definitely.
So far.
All right, let's keep going with this.
That's a bad thing for many reasons. Looking at other societal health metrics, research shows Christian countries have much higher rates of alcohol and drug abuse. Controlling for economic differences, Muslim countries have lower homicide rates than Christian countries. Stephen Fish's book, Are Muslims Distinctive?, shows per capita murder rates are significantly lower in Muslim countries. Female homicide rates are also lower. Rates of rape and sexual violence are likewise lower in Muslim countries and highest in Christian countries.
No.
Multiple studies.
They probably don't report them either.
Yeah, number one, none of this stuff is going to be reported in a lot of these poor countries. None of it is going to be reported as what it is in a lot of the countries that are ruled by Sharia law. That's the part of his argument that he's leaving out. He's giving you all these statistics about how there's no rape in the Islamic world. That's definitely false.
That's because they don't even believe that rape exists. Shit.
Yeah, you have the right to sexually assault your wife. That's not rape.
Yeah.
You have the right, even if she's 12.
And the marriage is forced to begin with.
Yeah, like if women don't have rights, and you define rape as unmarried sex, well, then of course you're going to have less rape. But that doesn't mean that it's not going on. And that's the other part of his argument that he's leaving out. A lot of the countries he's talking about are ruled, their constitution, which is non-existent, is Sharia law. It's what the Quran or what the imam's interpretation of the Quran is, or whoever the Muslim leader of the country, whether it's an Ayatollah or Shah or whatever king declares. They are ruled by the religious law, and in a lot of these Christian countries, they're secular countries. They have constitutions where religion is not allowed to impose the law. If it were different, if Christians had a country where it was ruled by Christian law or Mosaic law, the stats might be more similar. So it's kind of unfair. You can't really hammer the Christians because they happen to live in a society where they're not in a theocracy. It's a little bit unfair.
Yeah, that's right. The whole playing field is different. So what would you expect?
Show that the suicide rate for Muslims, it's much lower than Christians. These stats show how Islam outperforms Christianity in upholding religion, marriage, family, and community, making Islam better for society. We can examine why Islam consistently excels in these areas. First, Muslims are much more attached to religion than Christians because they're more compelling and intuitive than Christianity. For example, monotheism is easier to grasp than the Trinity. Islam is also more historically preserved. Carbon dating confirms that the Quran Muslims read today traces to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. By contrast, the Bible has evolved through layers of editing and reflects the theology of Paul far more than the teachings of Jesus. Islam also better preserves traditional life and family through a clear, comprehensive system of Sharia. Christianity, by contrast, offers only broad, highly malleable principles that different Christian groups interpret in conflicting and often contradictory ways. A Christian rebuttal could be that even if Islam excels at traditional values, it falls short on secular ones like individual freedom, self-expression, and scientific or economic progress. Christianity, they could argue, wins overall because it blends the best of both worlds, preserving core morals while still enabling the modern achievements of the Christian West.
So I wonder if that's how he'll argue, because that seems kind of a good way to attack that. I can't think of another way.
Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of options at this point if he's going to continue, if he's going to argue from a conservative perspective, you know. But one thing I left out of the last time I was speaking that he mentioned, you know, he was trying to suggest that in Islamic countries you have lower murder rates. Well, that's not true, because if you define an honor killing as legal, well then yeah, technically it's not murder, but in any other country that would be murder, you know. They do murder all the time, they just don't call it murder. So,
yeah,
they do unjust killings all the time, I should say, but they don't call it so, you know, if you define murder differently, then yeah, you can have lower murder rates, but you still have higher death rates. You execute every third person,
right?
You know,
exactly.
You're muted,
unmute, Sophia.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was saying that's effed up, man, but it's true.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep this going. I can't wait to see what he's going to say.
More freedom, science, technology, and higher GDP. This argument has fundamental problems, however. First, is Western prosperity due to Christianity or secularism? For example, how much of Western greatness comes from pre-Christian traditions like Greece and Rome? Furthermore, if Christianity drives prosperity, why haven't the oldest Christian nations like Ethiopia and Armenia matched the West's success? Likewise, recently Christianized societies like El Salvador and the Philippines have no comparable prosperity. Finally, why do more devoutly Christian societies have higher poverty and violent crime than more secularized Christian ones? Therefore, it's far from clear that Christianity is the secret sauce to scientific and economic progress. But there's a deeper problem. Mixing traditional and secular values never works. It's like mixing paint and paint thinner. Whenever societies try to combine traditional and secular values get abandoned. This is actually what has happened in the West, which was deeply Christian 200 years ago, but now has become the center of atheism and secular decay. This didn't happen overnight. This happened because Christians 150 years ago tried to mix traditional Christianity with the secular idea of progress. This happens because traditional values are based on duties. Preserving religion requires imposing duties on people to worship. Preserving family requires imposing duties limiting sexual freedom and providing care for children and the elderly. Preserving a nation requires duties to uphold shared norms, honor national symbols, or limit immigration. So preserving traditional values necessitates all these duties. The problem is duties are hard work requiring personal sacrifice. Because of this, duties necessarily restrict individual liberties while also generating inequality and discrimination. This is a problem for secular liberalism, which strives to free people burdened by duties. So the secular liberal system gradually eliminates duties to maximize individual freedom. This is done through two means: moral progress and scientific progress. Moral progress means, for example, liberating women by telling them they don't have a moral duty to serve their husbands. Scientific progress means inventing AI companies for the elderly so that little Bobby doesn't have to spend time talking to grandpa. Usually we think of progress as a good thing, but clearly progress can seriously damage society, because if you get rid of duties, this will weaken institutions of religion, family, and nation. The decay has been ongoing in the West since the 18th century, when liberal ideology kickstarted moral and scientific progress. Consequently, yes, the West has the highest GDP, but religion, family, and nation are weak, and people live as atomized individuals pursuing endless pleasure through tech-driven consumption. If you watch tech elites shaping Western society, you'll notice their transhumanist vision, Neuralink AI, etc. This is the logical endpoint of unchecked moral and scientific progress. The question is, which religion can stop this? Christianity has already adopted liberal secularism, and reformed itself by those standards. Even the most conservative Christians, like Andrew, won't take the radical steps needed to turn back the clock 200 years and stop the inevitable transhumanist future. The most radical thing that Andrew calls for is banning OnlyFans, maybe putting Christians in charge of America's government so that they can ban abortion, trans kids, and introduce public prayer. This won't stop, this won't slow down, let alone stop the freight train speeding humanity toward destruction. Islam, by contrast, offers the Sharia, comprehensive moral and legal, a comprehensive moral and legal framework that governs every dimension of life, individual conduct, family structure, community obligations, and social order. It does not merely tweak the secular liberal system, it represents a fundamentally different paradigm. And because Islam preserves a duty-based morality rather than dissolving it, it retains the internal resources to resist the liberal atomization and technological dehumanization.
All right. So
this man makes Islam sound so horrific. I wonder if I prefer a freaking Christian over that. Like,
well, I already came into this knowing that. Well, I don't want to bias. I'll wait until the end to present what I thought coming into it. But some of the funny things that he said there during that last monologue, that the West is the center of atheism. Did you guys realize the United States was the center of atheism?
Right, exactly. Sure.
He also said pursuing endless pleasure and technology is bad. That's what I'm getting from his message. So I wonder how this is going to go over with some of these right.
And he wants to turn back the hands of time by 200 years. Imagine that.
Yeah. So it's a devastating argument, I think, that Andrew Wilson's going to have to figure out how to navigate, because a lot of what this Muslim guy was saying is true. But including the part about how it's secularism that's responsible for progress and technology and scientific advancement and, more rights and pleasure. Like, he frames it as if it's a bad thing, but he is correct in that it was secularism that did that, not Christianity. So good luck, Andrew.
Question for the panel. Now that he's pretty much done, Andrew Wilson is about to enter the stage. How do you predict he's going to deal with this? Because I don't think he's going to be able to argue his same stuff. I don't know much about Andrew Wilson. I know a little bit, but from everything I've heard, he kind of argues like this Muslim guy. So I'm not really sure what his next tactic is going to be, just based on, what do you think? Start with you, Sophia. What do you think is next?
Well, I definitely think he's going to attack the fact that a lot of them, marry into their own family, or the incest stuff. I'm pretty sure he's going to bring up poverty and stuff like that. I mean, he's going to try to come back pretty hard, because I know Andrew Wilson, he ain't going to just sit there and roll over. But when he's losing a debate, he gets very emotional. So
yeah, I've seen that. He starts laughing all crazy.
He starts calling you dumb, stupid, all that stuff. So he might unravel a little bit.
Okay. What do you think, Bryce?
I mean, I don't know much about the guy, but if he's smart, he'll go after a lot of those things that Sophia mentioned, as well as potentially, marrying underage children, pedophilia and things like, although he's going to have a hard time attacking another religion for pedophilia when, the Catholic Church and some other Christian organizations do that too. But I mean, they don't sanction it openly, whereas in Islam, it's defended as, a religious right, so to speak, and so, but if he's smart, he'll attack some of the areas where Islam is demonstrably weak in terms of well-being. He could frame it as though Christianity provides a happier way of life, a more godly way of life, and if we define godly by longer lifespan, more prosperity, more wealth, and Islam offers none of that. So it seems that you're worshiping the wrong God. That's what I would do if I was a Christian arguing from a conservative background. I would say, a lot of the progress we have in Christianity, is because we're the godly people, and God is clearly, he's blessing us with the wealth and the happiness and the longer lifespans, and not all the violence that you have in Islam. So you guys might be worshiping the devil. That's what I would do.
And also, I think it would help him if he brought up Jesus, since the Muslims don't really believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I guess Jesus kind of changed the game, so to speak, too. Because when he came along, he said things like, allegedly, when he came along, he said things like, he who is without sin cast the first stone and stuff like that, So, I mean,
my kingdom is no part of this world. Yeah,
stuff like that. So, I mean, that could help him if he brings it up.
Yeah,
if he knows the Bible, though.
Yeah, and he does. He doesn't, though. That's
right.
That's wishful thinking. That he will.
That's the problem. Yeah, this is going to be interesting.
Let's see.
Let's see how smart he is.
That opening from Daniel.
think the audience is a bit stunned. They don't know how
I
to
got the
react.
timer set for you, Andrew, on your first word.
All right.
Good job, man.
Yeah, good
The
job.
fun thing about debate is you get to actually get in the mind of your opponent. What?
Yeah, inbred. Yep, you're right. There you go, Sophia.
The fun thing about debate is you get to actually get in the mind of your opponent. You get to study and dissect the things that they say and believe. After watching Daniel for hours, a few things became obvious. The first, he's a far better Muslim apologist than I am a Christian apologist, that's for sure. But he's far weaker on politics than myself and the nature of the world. The second is that he's an above average debater, but he ain't quite God tier. See, if I were Daniel and fighting from his worldview, I'd point out Christianity is fractured and weak, that Christianity is totally incapable of fighting back against the degeneracy of our time.
He kind of did,
impotence
though.
has led to
He did
social
do that.
categories of degeneracy at levels nobody could have predicted, especially with the advent of the internet. I would point out Muslim societies don't work that way, that Muslims have feminism and degens under control, that everything in modern day Christians in the West are fighting for against degeneracy, Islam has already achieved in their lands.
He
That's
did
what
all
I would
this.
do if I were Daniel.
Yeah,
He did.
When talking about which is better for society, Islam or Christianity,
yeah. His whole discourse was about that.
He's reading from a script that he planned before he heard the other
Beforehand,
guy's
yeah.
argument.
Mm.
And now his script doesn't work because he literally did all the things that he was going to accuse him of not doing. This is bad already.
He's already failing. Fuck.
Yeah, this is bad.
He should have did some adjustments while he was listening.
Yeah.
this becomes a powerful argument. But I'd go a step further if I were Daniel. I'd also say my opponent will argue like an atheist progressive. That Andrew Wilson, the guy who promotes anti-feminist and egalitarian doctrine, is going to sit up here and act like an egalitarian progressive and cry about Islam being mean to the women and cry about Islam not being very nice to the gays. Well, you were fucking wrong. Sadly for Daniel, while this tactic would normally be effective against a sewing circle Christian, I'm not part of that cast, sir. Now, let me get into my argument for why Christianity makes better societies than Islam, and it's pretty simple. Islamic societies breed an inbred population. Whoa. Next slide, please.
Oh, shit.
Muslim inbreeding has been occurring at a high rate for about 1,400 years since the early Islamic period, encompassing most of the land still occupied by Islam today. It spread from the 8th to the 15th century, moved into Persia, North Africa, South Asia, where it remains and has created some of the dumbest fucking human beings on planet Earth. The most common type of inbreeding is first cousin marriage. The rates of first cousin marriage in comparison to Christian nations is staggeringly high, even in comparison to regions occupied by Arab Christians. When a nation has both Christians and Muslims, Muslims are often double or higher than Christians. Example, India, Lebanon. Next slide, please. Muslim inbreeding. Oh, sorry about that. Pakistan at 65%. 65%, meaning more likely than not, you're having sex with your cousin, and if you're not, you're the weird one. Okay? Remember, AD, that means these people are more likely than not having sex with their aunts or uncles' children.
Oh my God. This has got to be hard for that Muslim to listen to. He's just got to stand there and hear this shit.
But here's the problem, though. Go ahead, Sophia. I'll let you go first.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, but that's what they believe in, so.
And not only that, this is not really, like, does Wilson know that the Bible, that incest is a part of the Bible about, I mean, does he know how humanity came into existence according to the Bible? Does he know that incest was, like, required?
Exactly.
Does he? And by the way, the thing he's accusing Muslims of also applied to certain European countries back in the day. I mean, the United Kingdom, the British Isles, was arguably very inbred. You know, if inbreeding is the problem, inbreeding happened in Europe all the time. You know? Exactly. We've gotten to the point now where it's a little bit more diversified, but America obviously is one of the least inbred countries because it's so diverse. There's so much genetic diversity here from immigration and slavery and indigenous people all mixing together. But, you know, I mean, if incest is his problem, that's only a problem from a scientific, secular perspective because we know the science behind it. But what's the biblical problem with this? What's the Christian problem with this? He hasn't said that yet.
Right. He's just, again, I think he's appealing to emotion.
And it does play into the guy's point. He believes in science, which is secular. So
yeah,
he's just kind of proving the guy's point.
There's nothing in the Bible that's against incest between cousins, by the way.
Right.
Not that I know of.
So
not at all.
Anyway.
Saudi Arabia, 50 to 58%, with an average 76 IQ. Who would have thunk it? UAE, 54%, 82 IQ. The crown jewel of the Arab world, you are more likely than not to be banging your first cousin. Iran, 40%, 80 IQ. Yemen, 45%, 62.9 IQ. Qatar, 30%, 80.8 IQ.
It's a family crisis that's unfolding in real time. A mother is patting her 10-month-old baby.
His numbers,
we're
by the
continue,
way.
Right?
His numbers on that last slide, I don't know if you could go back a second, but I don't think they make the point that he's making. Like, he's trying to correlate IQ with amount of incest, and I don't know if it correlates between all those countries. Some of the countries he mentioned had higher incest and lower IQ, but then other countries he mentioned had lower incest and lower IQ. You know what I mean? Like, so
but
there's
also I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say there didn't seem to be a direct correlation there between the numbers he was given, and he's not even offering other explanations for low IQ, like lack of education and lack of infrastructure and all that. There's all kinds of reasons for low IQ that go beyond just, what he thinks is the primary reason, cousin to cousin incest.
Right, but what does IQ have to do with Abrahamic religions anyway? You're supposed to just be obedient and follow orders.
That's true.
So
yeah.
Yeah, and there's statistics I was looking at, like when it comes to debate and swaying your, crowd or whatever. The fact that you just put up a screenshot like that or numbers, that's enough to sway the audience in your favor, because usually people are very slow thinkers, very fast thinkers, so they just assume that what you're putting up there is correct, and then it wins your debate for you. No one really takes the time to double check anything.
Also, remember what I said about how his audience is probably racist. So that first slide where he shows, what are supposed to be Muslims that appear to be inbred. I mean, yeah, that's a winning strategy for him. It's a good debate tactic if your definition of winning the debate is winning over the audience. Is it a rational and sound argument? No, but it might win this audience over.
Exactly.
Audience is biased, so if you can do things like that to make them applaud in a very racist way, you might win.
Absolutely.
Cousin marriage, in comparison to Christian nations, is staggeringly high, even in comparison to regions occupied by Arab Christians. When a nation has both Christians and Muslims, Muslims are often double or higher than Christians. Example, India, Lebanon. Next slide, please. Muslim inbreeding. Oh, sorry about that. Pakistan at 65%. 65%, meaning more likely than not, you're having sex with your cousin, and if you're not, you're the weird one.
Yeah, see, pause this for a second.
Okay. For the
so according to his logic, the more cousin-to-cousin incest you have, the lower your IQ should be, right? But in the UAE, apparently 54% of people are screwing their cousins. They have a higher IQ than the only 30% of people from Qatar that are screwing their cousins. So this argument doesn't really, you have to not know how statistics works in order to buy this. You're right. He's just flashing data on there. The audience is not smart enough to dissect this or figure out whether this is even true.
Doesn't incest only affect the people who were affected by it, who suffer, deformities or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, it can. It's not guaranteed to, but it can result in that.
if it does result in that, then those would be the only people that would be directly affected by it, right? Or I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. He's pulling IQ from the general population and not from the people who he knows have engaged in the incest. So he can't prove that incest even causes low IQ by this measure that he's doing. You know, he's just saying this is the number of people in the society that do incest, and this is the average IQ of the society. You know, but that's one. He's not even showing a proper correlation here from what I just said before.
And how would they go about testing IQ of other countries?
It must be based on self-reporting, I guess.
Yeah. It's not reliable.
That seems very suspicious.
Yeah. These are not good stats, but again, his audience, it's going to go over their head and they're going to be like, yeah, incest, low IQ.
They're the low IQ people.
It's the Dunning-Kruger effect, you know. They must
came straight from the Appalachians.
Yeah.
Exactly. Correlation, causation, fallacies. Yeah.
Yep.
IQ members of MDD, that means these people are more likely than not having sex with their aunts or uncles' children. Saudi Arabia, 50 to 58%, with an average 76 IQ. Who would have thunk it? UAE, 54%, 82 IQ. The crown jewel of the Arab world, you are more likely than not to be banging your first cousin. Iran, 40%, 80 IQ. Yemen, 45%, 62.9 IQ. Qatar, 30%, 80.8 IQ. Now, we're going to continue, right? Oman, 36%, 78.
Is this his entire
Syria,
argument?
39%, 74 IQ. Turkey, 25%.
Wow, so he planned this out.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, he planned this whole thing out, it looks like. And I guess he may have predicted what he was going to attack him on. Okay.
So far, this is a very one-dimensional argument, though. I hope he has more to bring, because the Muslim guy, he brought lots of different criteria for why he thinks Islam is better. If this is the one criteria Andrew Wilson has, I don't know that this works as a good argument.
A little limited.
Yeah.
Yep.
86 IQ. Jordan, 32%, 80 IQ. Egypt, 32%, 76 IQ. It goes on and on and on, and it just never gets better. Next slide, please. Thank you. Compared to Christian countries, let's take a look. Usually less than 1%. Now, I wonder why Christians build better societies, ladies and gentlemen. Now, let's keep going. We want to pull up the slide here, moving right along. As countries become more Christian, inbreeding declines. Right? We can see this.
Look at the Islamic guy. He's sitting there like, God damn it, what did I walk myself into? Because just, I'm trying to put myself in his mind. He's not going to think very nuanced, like Bryce is bringing up things like that. For him, this has got to be, God damn it. Like this is his level argumentation.
He's probably thinking this is the Dunning-Kruger effect on steroids. I mean, this guy thinks that he's smart, and he's talking about IQ as if he knows anything about it, as if he knows how data works, as if he's making an intelligent argument right now. And so the other guy must be thinking, wow, I have to lower my standard of intelligence points in order to have a conversation and convince these people. That's what I would be thinking. But I don't want to overestimate his intelligence either, because I'm not convinced that he's a particularly intelligent person. I'm just comparing him to this argument that I'm saying now.
But yeah, you make a good point, because if you compare his opening with Andrew's, there's a stark difference. It seems like
he blew out of the water. Let's just say it like it is.
Yeah. He's trying to be, a lot more to the point and nuanced with a lot of different examples, and Andrew's just sticking on one low-hanging fruit argument.
Which is typical for him, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
From church intervention in Spain, 20 to 30% post Reconquista, Catholic Church banned cousin marriages for commoners, papal dispensations sold
It's called
for
papal,
royals.
dipshit.
Italy, similar high rates in the medieval period. The church enforced bans over the century. France, high medieval. Canon law prohibited marriage within 4 degrees of relation. Modern Western Europe, it's not just the cultural norm, but let me tell you exactly how much of a cultural norm it is. Even in European nations where marrying your first cousin is legal, they don't do it because of the ecclesiology. Isn't that wild? Africa shows the more Christians and less Muslim the societies become, the better they do. Let's just take a look at Nigeria. Okay, we can go down the list here. 50% Nigeria, 20 to 30% first cousin marriage. Isn't that crazy? Now let's move right on down. You can see South Africa, Muslim 1.5%, very low on to negligible in the national prevalence of cousin fucking. Whew. You can look at the list. It's pretty comprehensive. We can continue to go, right? The bottom 20 least productive sub-Saharan African countries. Wouldn't you know it? They're all Muslim. 99% Muslim in Somalia. Whew, very high. 60% first cousins. Anybody ever hear a joke about Somalian IQ? Let's look.
Wow. So I'm confused. Is he still talking about cousin marriage here, or is he talking about something else? Because this says least productive. Least productive at what? Is he talking GDP? This looks like a GDP chart to me.
Right.
So it looks like he switched topics from cousins from incest to GDP.
To the GDP, right? So he's bringing another argument in without talking about how he's changing it up.
Yeah, that was a bad transition, but it may not be a bad talking point yet. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Look over at Niger, 99% Muslim, 60% cousin marriage. First cousin marriage. Let's take a look at Muslims. When we're taking a look at Malil, it's a 90% population, high cousin marriage. In other words, everywhere Islam goes, the IQ goes like this because they all are fucking their cousins. Not joking. Go over to the next slide, please. I want to show you.
So we're supposed to be
case. These are
evaluating the logic of the arguments, right? The whether they're rational arguments, right? So
Right.
I would say that that's a terrible argument because he has not made that case. He showed a bunch of statistics that he doesn't understand and his audience doesn't either, but he has not shown any causation between cousin incest and IQ. None at all.
Right.
He has not shown that causation. He's asserting it because he doesn't understand how correlation does not imply causation, and neither does his audience. So that's a not very good argument. The GDP, I don't know how he's trying to tie GDP into that. That seems like a non sequitur to me.
Right. I mean,
that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole thing is which is best for society, and then best, like what measure, like no one's really, well, I guess the Islamic guy did, but Andrew hasn't really stated a criteria for what constitutes best.
That's true too.
He's just kind of reacting and saying, you know what, there's a lot of incest going on. I'm correlating that with the overall IQ of the country per my statistics, and therefore I win the argument.
Yeah, and also I think Daniel, the Muslim guy, I think he headed a lot of this off at the past because he already pointed out that the reason a lot of allegedly Christian countries do better is because of secularism, not Christianity. And so Andrew, he's trying to take credit for higher GDP or more productivity because of Christianity, when he hasn't shown that Christianity influences that at all. All he has shown is that, according to his data, Muslims are more likely to engage in cousin-to-cousin incest and have a low IQ. But that doesn't show that Christianity wouldn't be the same if it weren't for secularism. And the Muslim guy kind of already addressed that.
In which version of Christianity are we talking about? Like,
yeah, and also Sorry, I just want to say, notice how South America, I don't know which South America country he was looking at there, whether it was Brazil or Colombia. He had some South American country highlighted as being particularly bad. The Muslim guy did. Andrew Wilson didn't bring up that country at all, because if he did, it would kind of work against his argument. Christianity only seems to be better off in these places, but not in these poor places. It seems to look just like Islam in these poor places. So maybe there's a lot of incest going on there too, according to your reasoning.
Called the rat people of Pakistan. It's a condition known as microphalics. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I have no idea. And it's caused by excessive inbreeding. When's the last time you went to a European country and saw that? You don't see it. Inbreed, yeah. Now, hang on. Next slide, please. As we continue, let's just take a look here at the casual link between.
He has not pronounced anything correctly yet.
Oh my God, he
can't even get basic words right. I was about to compliment him for putting in a causal link slide, but he couldn't even pronounce it right. So he pronounced papal wrong. He pronounced causal wrong. There was a third word he pronounced wrong a few minutes ago. So if he's trying to convince people that Christians have a higher IQ, he's not doing a very good job.
No. Yeah, he's kind of self-refuting. Fuck.
Basically, there's increased homozygosity. I think that's how it's pronounced, for deleterious recessive genes. And it is the strongest causal link
how it's pronounced
for why the IQs are so.
Man.
Yeah, no, he doesn't know how to say words. And to be fair, that's a more difficult word than the average person, but he should just stop trying. He should just say, I'm not going to try to pronounce this. You can see it on the screen.
Exactly.
Below. Genetic risk. Inbreeding raises the chances of inheriting 2 copies of harmful recessive genes. Brain development impact. Harmful genes can impair neurodevelopment, reducing cognitive potential. IQ reduction evidence. First cousin offspring lose 3 to 4 points on average, and closer inbreeding can cause larger deficits. They've been at it for 1,400 years. Whew. Higher prevalence equals greater risk. Populations with widespread cousin marriage show more individuals with lower cognitive performance. Generational compounding over successful generations.
According to who?
Harmful genes accumulate.
Right.
One of the big
Is there a
Muslim
source here?
folks you'll hear.
I don't see a
you'll hear
source.
from Daniel.
That would be my comeback. You need to cite your sources.
This would be impressive if this came from like the American Academy of Pediatrics or the American Medical Association or the British Medical Journal or something like legit. But
yeah,
he could just be making all of this up.
Yeah.
We don't know that any of this is true.
Right.
I'm not saying it's not true. It probably is, but this is not the way you do an argument.
No, you cite your sources. Exactly. That's just having, being a stand-up person. Yeah.
Nell said sources are for libtards.
Yeah, sources are for libtards.
Right. Well, it's only 1.5% for genetic problems for normal people who aren't having sex with their first cousin. Well, that's true. He says it only doubles to 3%. That's very low. No, it compounds. See, if you hump your first cousin and then those kids hump their first cousin and their kids are et cetera, et cetera, et cetera down the line, guess what happens to your IQ? Guess what? You'll never guess. Anybody got a guess? It goes down.
This is all guesses so far. That's all.
The negative consequences of a low IQ. 80 IQ versus 100 IQ person. Income 50 to 70% lower. Welfare dependency 4 to 6 times higher. Literacy less than 10% at less than 85 IQ. Obesity up almost 2 times. Chronic disease up to almost 2.5 times. Life expectancy less than 70 IQ or 75 IQ, down 5 to 10 years. Why? Because, well, you might just look down the barrel of that shotgun when you're cleaning it. Moving over, arrests and incarcerations 3 to 8 times higher. Violent offenses 4 to 6 times higher. Teen pregnancy 3 times higher. Child neglect and abuse 3 to 7 times higher. Intergenerational poverty 4 to 6 times. Almost every study available shows that IQ entering the low 80s, Muslim countries, affects nearly every aspect of life in a negative way. Economic prospects, criminality, mental, physical health, happiness metrics, and both at the individual and societal level. In fact, study shows that when a country has a sub 90 IQ average, they find it difficult to have basic innovation, infrastructure, professional class, and other basic needs of a functional society. Is that sounding familiar yet? Now, here's the thing that's interesting. Modern societies don't require everyone to be a genius. Just look at me. But they do rely on a distribution of abilities, and you can see their roles below. 70 to 85, basic job, practical skills, routine labor. That's Islam. That's almost every Islamic nation, ladies and gentlemen, 70 to 85. Sometimes up to 2 standard deviations lower. Whew. 85 to 100 would be skilled labor administrative support, 100 to 115 professional middle management, 115 to 130 engineer, scientist, doctors, specialized roles, the things they desperately need that they get from us. 130 plus innovation, leadership, high-level problem solving. Next slide, please. Inbreeding itself over generations causes massively compounds that lead to negative consequences. And you can see the risk curve there. You see how the genetic defects increase every single generation.
So basically, he just has one argument, and it's inbreeding.
Yeah, and he's just honing in on it. He's hovering over this topic because it's so emotionally trigger. It's making people laugh. Mm-hmm. It's making people say, "Wow, that's shocking." That's so, it shocks my sensitivities, and that's playing into the hands of the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect that there's probably more than a few people in the audience who realize that this is a bad argument. They probably understand that correlation does not always imply causation. They probably understand that he hasn't sourced anything yet, but because they're biased and they hate Muslims, they're going to act as if he's making a cogent argument here anyway.
Right.
That's what I think is probably the case.
That's what I can't stand with this sort of dishonest sort of grifters. They're just disguising their racism and bigotry into, oh no, I'm just being scientific. I'm just going through the facts, facts over feelings, man.
Right. But in some ways it kind of plays into the other guy's argument for how, this is secular science you're appealing to. This is not, you haven't addressed anything I said about Christianity, Christianity seems to be the weaker religion because all of these things that you're calling progress, that's the result of secularism, not Christianity.
Yeah. And I mean, the way I learned about Christianity was that the Christians were supposed to be downtrodden. They were supposed to be the poor. They were supposed to be.
Well, they're supposed to be persecuted.
Yeah, persecuted and all that. They weren't supposed to be builders and world leaders and stuff. That's not their role.
Well, I did want to say something, though, because I was looking this up as we go along. And from what I could find, it does say that exogamy is deeply Christian, meaning marrying outside of your family apparently was enforced by the early church. So maybe it's not just due to secularism.
Well, that would have been a good argument for Andrew Wilson to make if he knew that.
And he didn't, though.
Yeah. That's the problem here. This is I'm not evaluating their conclusions about which society is better. They both suck.
Right.
Generally, I lean towards Christian societies are better by most objective metrics, but I don't know that it's because Christianity. And in fact, in most cases, I know it's not.
Right.
But he should have appealed to that. If he wants to make the case that Christianity is responsible for this better situation, he should have done what you just did. You did that in like a few seconds. Why wasn't he doing that when the other guy was making this argument?
Right.
Because he likes to do what he's doing.
Yeah, he likes to play that game. And by the way, next week we're going to also react to another guy. I don't know if you're familiar with this person, Bryce. I would love to hear your response to that. So you're invited for that too. But we're going to be talking about Marquette, and he's a Black American, and he makes similar arguments about. Is he sort of pro white supremacy in a way? He kind of
I don't know. That guy is a whole narcissist, but he's a chameleon. He says whatever the hell he needs to say. But supposedly he represents the FBAs, which are what does that stand for? Foundational Black Americans. They're kind of like trying to gatekeep Blackness. And they are anti-immigration, especially immigrants from Africa. And they're very red-pilled. They believe that women should obey their husbands and everything is women's fault. I mean, he's like a Black version of Andrew Wilson.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
he declined to debate. Andrew Wilson, I think, wanted to debate him.
Well, what they debate?
Well, people were suggesting that he does debate Andrew Wilson, but he won't.
Right.
What could he debate him on?
Because they share similar values, pretty much.
But the thing is, Marquette says that. Yeah, well, Marquette doesn't like Andrew Wilson, and one of the things about Marquette, the African American guy, is he says that Christianity is white supremacy, the religion of white supremacy.
I mean,
it is right,
of
course. And so that's where they have a falling out, those two.
Got it. Okay.
But that's like the only difference, though. It's pretty much he's like a Black supremacist, and he believes that everybody should be a supremacist, but yet he is against white supremacy. So that's why
he's a walking contradiction.
Yeah, and unfortunately, though, this dude's highly influential, and a lot of Black people follow him. And I kind of wanted to get together with people who wouldn't mind coming after his ass because he's a bad influence, and he's a grifter. He makes money off of the people who support him. He's always begging for donation. He's like this fake businessman and pretending to be a millionaire and all this kind of stuff. And I'm pretty sure he isn't. I did some research on him. His main income is off of his internet presence, So yeah, he's terrible. Somebody needs to call him.
And not that anything's wrong with this. I'm not saying anything's wrong with it, but he's very highly effeminate. Like, he just has very feminine ways of speaking and acting. And the problem I have with that is because he's always condemning gay people and saying how it's ruining the Black community and stuff like that. Yet he seems so effeminate, like he's so emotional, like he goes into these outbursts. It's like the things that he charges effeminate gay people with. He says, gay people are so emotional. They act like women, they cry and scream about things they don't agree with. Yet he does it on steroids. It's so amazing.
He's basically like one of those guys that has suppressed homosexuality, and you already know how those kinds can get. He should actually embrace his own homosexuality, right, and he'd be a better person.
I think
he's one of those.
I would respect him so much more if he would just say that. But he's just on this grind against gay community. It's sickening.
I'm going to slightly disagree. I would not respect him more if he said that, because who is that conservative commentator, the white guy he's gay, but he's totally anti-gay rights and
Jesse. Yeah.
I can't remember his name right now, but that he's like openly gay, but he's like, yeah, no, I'm against gay marriage and I'm against, he's totally anti-trans.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I don't respect that at all.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't either. I mean, he should
at least this guy's pretending that he's not gay. He's trying not to be gay. He's trying to pray the gay away or whatever.
I
don't know.
Pray the gay away.
Yeah. But if you're embracing, if you're openly admitting that you're a homosexual and you're also anti-gay and anti-trans, then I respect you less.
I just think that's impossible. You can't be anti-gay if you're gay yourself. That's just that dude's obviously. He's getting paid. Yeah, that dude's getting paid to say that crap, and he's probably not. He's either really gay or he's gay for pay. Something like that.
Who knows? Maybe the guy's, it's all an act. Sometimes I wonder, watching his videos.
He said he was a grifter, right?
Yeah, he's a grifter. Like, I'm wondering, is all of this just a ruse? Maybe he's faking that whole accent and act. And sometimes it comes off like it doesn't come off very realistic to me sometimes. But then again, I've met crazy ass people, sociopaths, people that are really crazy that act just like that. So I can't really call it one way or the other. But we'll do that next weekend. That would be really good. But anyways, let's keep going.
Moving over, I just want to point this out on the last slide. Islam took an ethnic people that were at the heart of being the top of civilization. And through generations of Islam and inbreeding has turned them into the lowest IQ, some of the stupidest people on planet Earth. Literally. You think I'm being mean? I'm not. They're literally some of the stupidest people on planet Earth. Everywhere Islam goes, inbreeding increases and societies become worse. Where Christianity goes, inbreeding decreases, so societies do better in almost every material way. Let's just point out here, as I wrap this up. 1 second. So it's clear here that my argument summarized, though this isn't its entirety, is that Islam creates huge societies with large swaths of people with IQs so collectively low, they would be considered developmentally challenged, borderline retarded here in the West. Not kidding. Due to this side effect, force doctrine becomes the order of the day. Because the technological difference in capabilities of each people group is so vastly different, think Apollo mission compared to Starship Enterprise, Islam must literally bank on the benevolence of Christians to not wipe them off the face of planet Earth. They are basically, the feminists of the East, totally reliant on the goodwill and benevolence of global Christianity, not to just not exterminate them. Okay? And take their resources, always appealing to the mightier force for their existence and the benevolence of that very people group who Daniel today is arguing doesn't make better societies.
Well, that's a little bit debatable now that we're losing with Iran so much. Seems like those little Muslims. Back in 2025, November.
So it's a little bit behind the times.
Yeah. So that didn't age too well.
Yeah.
Because the asymmetric warfare, they are kicking ass.
I mean, you would think if it was that easy to get rid of them, they probably would have already.
Right. No doubt. No doubt. But, yeah, we'll see.
Well, here's the thing, though. If it was only up to Christians, and if we lived in a theocracy and NATO was composed of countries that were Christian theocracies, they may have been successful in wiping out all the Muslims. It's the secular humanists that think that that's probably an evil thing to do.
Right.
So, I'm not going to vote for. I'm against the killing of the Palestinians. That this is a bit ironic because I'm not siding with this guy at all. But this Daniel character, he brought up the Israeli genocide of Gaza. If I thought that he gave a damn about humanity, that would be impressive. That's something that would affect me. That's a strong argument to a secular humanist, but to a Christian who doesn't give a damn about Muslims, that's a terrible argument. If it was up to them, they would wipe them all out.
Yep. And they have done this to people throughout history. So
yeah.
It's not like we don't know that's what they would do.
Christianity loves genocide.
Yes.
I don't know if any of these people know how America got started, but it was founded on genocide.
Exactly.
We have something called the Trail of Tears, and Manifest Destiny and all these Christian things that are based on killing other people and taking their land, killing all of them. Kill them all, let God sort them out.
Those are
Christians.
Beloved traditions.
So,
like Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Take their what you supposed to do according to the Bible? Loot their villages, take their women, make them slaves and whatnot.
You're supposed to take the virgin girls and kill everybody else.
Yeah. Wow.
War brides.
Yeah. Now, that's not Christianity, but that is biblical. That is in the Old Testament. That's what God commanded the Israelites to do to their enemies.
Yeah, God's chosen people. Yeah.
Which is a laughable proposition. Even absent the degeneracy of a people group, a people group must be able to competently defend itself or bank on the benevolence of the people group, which can. And almost everybody is going to prefer the society that can. Imagine the irony here of arguing against the very Christians you find inadequate morally, yet bank on their moral benevolence to not wipe your low IQ fucking asses off the face of planet Earth.
Ooh, good.
He's so rude. He is so ruthless.
See, that's what I'm saying. He's appealing to that crowd, man. They love hearing that kind of stuff. That's why Trump is in power now, because these people, they're so divisive and tribalistic.
They have that lynch mob mentality. They always want to see somebody hang.
Yeah.
But he's not making a case for why Christianity produces better societies. He's just asserting that the best societies happen to be in the nations that are non-theocratic.
Right.
That's the only thing he's done. He didn't show at all that Christianity produces better society, just that Christians live in better societies.
Mm-hmm.
So
and the only point he's making here is that it's only because of their Christian values that they haven't obliterated them yet. And so they should be grateful to the Christians.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's an effective strategy against this ironic low IQ crowd. But it's not a good argument.
It's not a real argument.
It's not a real argument. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that opening as well. I wanted to take a moment to say thank you to our friends at Maine First Project for sponsoring DebateCon 6, as they also believe in the values of free speech and fair debate. Maine First Project is fighting for conservatism in New England and beyond. So check out their link in the description box below. We are going to jump into the 5-minute rebuttals. Just a quick reminder, folks, please be sure your phones are on silent, and also please do refrain from recording or streaming any footage other than if it's TikTok length. That's fine. But we're going to kick it into 5-minute rebuttals. First with Daniel, the floor is all yours.
So this falls exactly into what I predicted. You argued like a libtard. This falls into exactly what I predicted. You argued like a libtard. How? You're saying that success is on the basis of IQ. Well, how are you going to argue tomorrow when you debate with an atheist that Christian IQ is higher than secular atheist IQ? In fact,
no, he kind of, I think that's a little bit incorrect. I don't think he argued like a quote unquote libtard. I think he just attacked their inbreeding in low IQ, which is not a liberal talking point necessarily. That's he's just appealing to emotion. That's what he did.
Yeah, but if you go by him attributing it to secularism that inbreeding is wrong, then he's probably saying, well, you're coming from the place of science, which is considered secularism. Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If he's smart, the Muslim guy I'm talking, Daniel, he'll point out that the only reason you're against cousin to cousin incest is because of secular morality, not biblical morality, because the Bible says you can do it. That doesn't come from Christianity. You're stealing from the secular worldview. That's what he should say. And the problem with that is this works kind of against both of them, because Andrew, he's appealing to emotion, like you said, Scott, right? So he has no argument for this, but he's just going to be like, duh, it's common sense. This guy's promoting incest. Come on. This is what the Muslims, low IQ, they want to do incest. He didn't have an argument. He just has like ad hominem fallacies.
Right.
And he knows the majority's going to agree with that.
Yeah, they're going to clap no matter what he says.
So now I see what you're saying, Sophia, how he's kind of similar to Kit, because he does the same thing. Now that I think about it, they
are the same type of archetype.
Yeah, that's crazy. I guess that works on the YouTubes.
Yeah.
the atheist IQ is much higher than Christian IQ. So your entire standard for judging Islam applies just as much to Christianity. And tomorrow, when you're debating the atheist, you'll have to concede that your Christian religion is associated or correlated with lower IQ. Therefore, atheism or secularism is better for society because it raises IQ.
Well,
I mean, that's true. That's a good point that it works to the point that he started with for how you're going to go back on yourself and you're not even consistent with your own worldview. That's what the Muslim guy is trying to tell.
I mean, he's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because all that religious shit is all the same, really. Like he's saying, it's just.
The only difference between them is that Daniel is owning the religious nonsense.
Right.
And Andrew Wilson is trying to get around it.
Yeah, he won't even address it.
Yeah.
He'll just blame the other guy for it. You know, it's like, yeah, he's right.
Well, if you look at the two, you know, Muslims, a lot of them are willing to blow themselves up for their beliefs. So there you go. They believe this shit.
Yeah, they really believe this shit.
Yeah.
This ain't just some shit we say on Sunday.
Yeah.
So that's one point. Point number two, where in the Bible does it restrict cousin marriage?
There you go.
As you acknowledge, is a later papal decree. It was not a part of Jesus's teachings.
That's the correct.
Look, he's about to snap. Look at him with that laugh, that crazy laughter.
Yeah,
that's
that is the correct
Bryce.
argument. That is the correct argument. I didn't know
Bryce
that he was going to go
good,
there,
man.
but okay.
That was good. Yeah. Yeah.
Come out and say, hey, if you want to have a successful society
in the audience, I do want to ask you to keep it down so we can hear the speaker.
Jesus didn't say, oh, hey, if you want success and you want to have a prosperous society, you shouldn't marry your cousin. Jesus never had this apparently essential Christian teaching that is the key to success on earth. That's your whole argument against Islam, and it's found nowhere in Jesus's teachings. It's found nowhere in the early church fathers' teachings. This is something that came
the Old Testament
later.
Yeah.
And also, when it was decreed that cousin marriage is considered to be incest,
and Jesus, you know, he was a Jew, so he followed the Old Testament. He used to promote that, you know.
Yeah, he followed the Old Testament and he commanded people obey the commandments as well. He
the law,
to follow the law, right? But there's nothing in the law against cousin to cousin incest. There are other types of incest that the Old Testament does speak out against, but it's usually in your nuclear family, you know, father, daughter, mother, son, you know, sister, brother, that sort of thing. Actually, I don't know that sister, brother is even in there, but I know that the other ones I mentioned are.
And I like how he said, if that's the main thing that matters, right, then it should be somewhere in there.
Right.
That strictly prohibits it.
And the only place he can get the prohibition from is from secular society.
Right.
So his point still remains, you know. Really good.
it wasn't on the basis of IQ. This is something that you have adopted from who? From atheists, from secularists, from those who are doing secular science to discover these medical problems or IQ levels. So your entire standard for judging Islam is not a Christian standard. It's not a biblical standard. It's not an Orthodox church standard. This is coming only from atheists, from atheistic science. True. Second of all, if IQ is such end-all, be-all, Christian societies, if you bring up a country list of countries by IQ, many Christian countries are on the bottom there. I don't know if you consider them to be true Christians because they're not white, but they're also at 80 IQ, 70 IQ, 70 IQ. Look at
I brought this up also.
Africa, look at Latin America, look at the Philippines.
I brought this up also on all of his slides. He didn't bring up the countries, the Christian countries that this Muslim guy brought up that were similar to the Muslim country. He omitted them, and so now he's pointing that out as well. So far, and this is a good counter argument, I think.
We also see this in America. Like, the more you go south, the worse it gets.
Yeah, that the more you're in the Bible Belt, the worse it gets. Yeah. So the one thing that I would have done if I was the Muslim guy, which he hasn't done yet, was challenge Andrew Wilson on his lack of sources. He didn't cite anything. You know, he's just accepting at face value that this correlation between IQ and incest is true. Maybe he doesn't want to go there because of the audience's low IQ. So maybe he doesn't want to get too deep on it, but I would certainly have brought that up if I was him.
Yeah, he's gonna keep it simple for the simple.
And to be clear, just to address the last person commenting there, not everyone in the Bible Belt is low IQ. That's not how correlation and causation and statistics works. You know, what we're saying is that if you're in the Bible Belt, the general population, you're more likely to have people of lower IQ than outside of it. But there's going to be people in the Bible Belt that have high IQ. There's going to be a lot of people living in the Bible Belt who aren't into the Bible, or who are not religious, or who are secular. I think a lot of that has to do with how religious people structure their society. That often puts a lot of red tape and stuff. It's the majority that rules in a state, right? And so if you happen to be a progressive, educated person who's living in Louisiana, you're surrounded by a bunch of dipshits. You know, your vote has limited power. So so it's obviously a stereotype. It doesn't apply to everyone there.
Exactly.
And, you know, Sophia's lucky that she lives in a really good southern state that she gets a lot of support.
He's being so sarcastic. I'm in Texas, and that's why he said that.
Yeah.
And I'm always crying to him how I want to get the hell out of here.
Yeah, I wanted to get the hell out of there last year too. And
you was there? You lived in Texas?
Yeah, I lived in Texas for a couple years. I'm in a neighboring state right now, so we'll see how long this lasts. But
well, you know,
it's
my
a long
pain.
Story.
You can relate to my pain then.
Yeah.
It's also comparable with Muslim countries. Do you consider them to be Christians or not? Also, go back to the Middle Ages. IQ was much lower in the Middle Ages in Christian societies. Why that has changed is because of the Flynn effect. IQ has increased globally across the world because of the Flynn effect. So if you have a problem, again, with lower IQ, look at medieval or Middle Age Christian societies. And also, here's another big problem. IQ is also linked with race. So if you want to prioritize high IQ, you should discourage interbreeding between races. Why should higher average IQ from Asians or whites or Jews or whatever race that has a higher average IQ, Christianity encourages or allows interbreeding between the races? That will result in a lower IQ.
You know who you're talking about there?
Yeah. First of all, there's the problem with this argument is I'm not sure that that's true. I'm not sure that Christianity encourages that. In fact, a lot of people would say that Christianity discourages that. I know a lot of people who are racist, and you just look at the history of our own country. Segregation was a thing largely upheld by Christians, you know, and so this is not really a good. This would be a good argument if it were true, but I don't think it is true. I don't think Christianity encourages race mixing. I think historically it's discouraged it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
So you should be against that because that's going to, over time, lower the average IQ of society. So that should be something that you need to oppose to be consistent. Interracial marriage or interracial breeding should be contrary to your point or contrary to your position.
I wonder if he'll address that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just shocked that your entire argument about why Christianity is better than Islam is a cousin marriage argument. That's like shocking because it just works so far against you. So if IQ is the end all be all of what makes a society good, then Christianity loses to atheism and secularism, like case closed. So like and many Christian societies are low IQ as in the same way as certain Muslim countries. The thing about the difference between me and you is my values are based on marriage, family, traditional values of that nature, not atheistic values of IQ and intelligence.
We're going to jump into Andrew's rebuttal as well. The timer
sounded like he was
5 minutes, Andrew.
It sounded like he was starting to improvise a little bit towards the end. He kind of got a little bit lost, but overall, I do think it was a good rebuttal. He left a couple things out, and that one argument he made towards the end where, you should be against interracial marriage. I'm not sure that Andrew Wilson isn't against interracial marriage. He may be.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's against it.
Yeah, so I don't think that was a good argument, because I think that Christians are against it, probably more than Muslims are. This is another irony. In a lot of Muslim countries, they don't care about race. They only care whether you're a Muslim.
Right.
But historically, in Christian countries, interracial marriage was illegal in the United States, in the South, for, I want to say centuries, but it was decades. Loving versus Virginia. When was that? The 50s, the 60s?
Yeah, 50s.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know that was a truth-based argument, but we'll see if Andrew Wilson is smart enough to, whether he'll just admit, yeah, I'm totally against interracial marriage. He probably will. I don't know.
Yeah.
You never know.
Libtard value. Don't fuck your first cousin. Libtard. Let me just point out that Daniel Haqiqatjou didn't actually rebut any of my arguments, not a single one. My argument was simple, and I'll repeat it here again. The argument is that your society has to rely on the benevolence of mind to exist because of your general IQ.
Okay, pause for a second.
Remember I told you the 70 to 85 is basic jobs?
He's saying he didn't rebut any of his argument. He actually did rebut the main part of the argument by pointing out that he's using a secular standard for all of this and not a biblical standard. This other part of Andrew Wilson's argument, that you need to rely on the benevolence of Christianity, that's kind of a non sequitur. That's not even relevant to the topic of discussion, because he hasn't proved that. First of all, they have to rely on the benevolence of the West, maybe, but a lot of that benevolence probably comes from secularism, not from Christianity.
Yeah, and that's where. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
But that's where he's being dishonest in my opinion, because if it wasn't for science, what would stop Christians from incest, right?
Right. Yeah.
And he's just trying to make it seem like it's a no-brainer, but why would humans automatically know that without science?
Yeah, and also he started with, you didn't actually debunk any of my argument. Cool. You didn't debunk any of his argument either, though. I'm still waiting for you to debunk anything he said about Christians and how you're a bunch of hypocrites stealing from secularism, because it made that point, and Andrew Wilson didn't address any of that.
No, he just keeps going back to the incest.
Yeah, so
that's all he's got. He's a one-trick pony here.
Practical skills, routine labor, that's most Muslim societies, sir. Doesn't matter if you point out two exceptions to the rule. Even in those societies in which Christians have a lower IQ, guess what you find? Their interbreeding rates are going down, and when you compare them to the same Arab population where they're inbreeding, that section of the population, the IQ is always lower. So what's my argument here? My argument is that Christian societies are better because they lower inbreeding, which collectively takes your IQ so far down the rabbit trail that you end up having to beg the higher IQ individuals for protection from them. You have to bank on their benevolence. Imagine this guy is banking on the benevolence of Christians who have a high enough IQ to basically eradicate all of the Middle East. There's nothing they can do about it. And they're banking on that benevolence while telling you all that you're immoral. You're immoral. This is not an atheist argument. Far away. Well, the argument here is based around what it is that we're discussing. And what are we discussing? Which makes for better societies, right? Christianity or Islam? How can you claim you have better societies, sir, when half of your societies are so inbred, their IQs are like borderline retarded? How? How could this possibly be of benefit? And you know what they do when they go to other countries? They keep doing it. They keep doing it. Now he says, well, if you value IQ more than all other values, who said anything about that? The debate is not about that. It's about which makes for better societies. Now, which society would you rather live in? Would you rather live in a society of donkey pull cart, right? Donkey pull cart, because we're not smart enough to make car. We're not smart enough to even have infrastructure because we're at 70 IQ, 80 IQ, borderline retarded individuals. That's a society. Who's moving there? Who's moving? Nobody. They're all moving here. Why? Because they want the societies that Christians have. By the way, let me point a couple other things out. No, Christians are not stupid. Yes, their IQs are much higher, much, much higher. Even in non-white areas, they're much higher, sir, because they don't inbreed. And it's very frowned upon. Go figure. And interestingly enough, let me just point this out, that Christians have a much smarter enemy. Much smarter enemy. You're right. They do have a high IQ. You need high IQ people to combat that with these values. Islam can make no inroads. They don't have the technology. They can't mount an invasion. They can't even make a fucking power plant, right? How are they going to do that? Daniel, what's your...
Just factually incorrect. He's just into appealing to emotion and humiliating and bashing people based on their religious beliefs. Like, that doesn't move the needle.
Yeah, I'm not really sure where he's going with this either. I thought he started off with, which society would you want to live in, a Christian society or a Muslim? And then I thought he was going to go to all of the statistics that show that the majority of Christian countries are actually better. But then he went to, we could bomb you off the face of the earth. You guys can't do anything. I'm like, that doesn't tell me which society I would rather live in, though. Like, that doesn't prove that one is a better society than the other. Well, that you know what I mean? Like, it's right. It was kind of a disjointed. He started off with potential for a good argument, and then it just like jumped off a cliff. So, you're right. His entire tactic seems to be Muslims are stupid. Muslims are inbred. Muslims are stupid because they're inbred. Don't be Muslim because you'd be inbred and stupid. That's it. Like, that's the summary of his entire argument.
And then he's basically adding to that, I have a bigger D than you, and you should be following us because we could blow you off of the earth, and that's just dominance.
Yeah. And, a lot of this stuff is, value driven. Like, he's talking about how, in the West, we have power plants and we create and we innovate and we have all this technology. Well, he can point to other countries, Muslim countries, that they haven't gone to the moon yet, for example, or they haven't built nuclear power plants and stuff, which really is not true anyways. But,
I mean, he doesn't
values, like some people don't see value in that.
If I was now, I'm trying to think of how I would argue from Andrew Wilson's perspective. It's hard because he's a conservative and a Christian, and I'm neither of those things. But I'm thinking, you should be going after how you guys are okay with pedophilia. We do it, but you guys are actually okay with it. We do it and we try not to get caught, but you guys are just like, no, we should just all be pedophiles. Like, that makes Islam worse. You guys do female genital mutilation. You guys have all of this stuff that makes life generally worse. You don't even believe in education. Maybe men should be superior to women, but that doesn't mean all of our women should be stupid. Our women are smarter than yours. That's what he should do if he was smart.
Right.
He hasn't done any of that. He's just like this one-trick pony.
Yep.
His big plan is to bank on the fact that there's enough suicidal empathy in the West to keep on importing Muslims. That's about it. That's it. That could be his only plan. These people can't make armies. That requires massive organization and mobilization. You think that these people could ever attack the West? That's a laughable prospect. He started with Zionism. He has 10 million Jews in his backyard. They can't do shit about it. Nothing. 1 billion versus 10 million. They can't do anything. They launched their entire missile payload. It does nothing because of the IQ difference in these regions. The IQ difference is so
pause for a
wide
moment.
That if they even try.
That's actually not the reason. The real reason is because of American funding the IDF and the Israeli regime, the Netanyahu regime. We give them billions of dollars to do exactly that. So that's the real reason they can't defeat Israel, because we give them money. However, the thing I really wanted to address was Nell's last comment. I'm not sure if Nell is male or female, so forgive me if I missed
female.
Female. Okay. What she seems to be saying, he could bring up, Andrew Wilson presumably could bring up the fact that in these Muslim countries they throw gay people off of rooftops, and we don't do that because we hate gays too. So I think the argument is we're morally better than you because we don't do that. But I don't think that argument would work, because really, if he really believed in the Bible, you probably should be throwing gays off buildings. I mean, the Bible says to execute homosexuals.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know the Bible, He doesn't know Leviticus 20:13. He doesn't know Leviticus 18:22, I think. But the Bible supports killing homosexuals. So if he were to bring that up as if that's a win for Christianity, the other guy could just turn it around on him and say, you didn't get that from Christianity. You got that from secularism.
Right, exactly. So, that's the point.
Tried to collectivize, it would still be done, and they know it. And they can't collectivize anyway because it requires a high enough IQ to follow orders. Okay? So that's my argument.
That's not true either.
Basically, is very simple. You have to have a high enough IQ to have a society to begin with. Christians make it.
Let me just say this really quickly. That last statement he made is absolutely not true. The trying to correlate IQ with the ability to follow orders. No, it's actually the opposite.
Right.
The higher your IQ, the more you question orders. This is why officers are required to have a degree and enlisted men are not. They want the lower ranking people to follow orders without question. Their job is not to think, it's just to do. They want the thinking people making decision, and the higher you go and the more education you have in the military, the more you do question orders. So that the correlation he has there is backwards.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a military vet, by the way. I should probably have said that. I'm not just making shit up.
No, I agree with that. That doesn't even make logical sense. When you're just following orders, you're obviously not using your brain at all.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't require a lot of IQ to follow orders. If that was the case, there's a joke in here. There's an inter-service military joke. I'm not going to make it because I don't want to disrespect the military.
Yeah.
But there's a joke in there. That is not the case. I'll just say it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Where they go, you fucking your family members. My God. Back to you, Daniel.
Is that?
I think the audience knows this is a bad argument.
Yeah.
With that, we have 60 minutes of open dialogue, though the open dialogue is broken into 90-second segments, just to be sure there's no interruptions. Daniel, we're ready for you for your first 90 seconds.
Sure. So he said I didn't address his argument that Muslims rely on Christian benevolence because Christians have such high IQ that they could just technologically eliminate Muslims whenever they wanted. Well, Christians are at the mercy of atheists. Christians are at the mercy of higher IQ atheists. Christians are at the mercy of higher IQ Ashkenazi Jews. Christians are at the mercy of China and Asia. If you want to make a might makes right argument, then we're in the same boat, buddy. Muslims and Christians are closer together in the same boat compared to these other groups. So this is a self-defeating argument. Also, AI.
Mm-hmm.
AI is going to eliminate this so-called advantage of IQ. AI is making it irrelevant. I don't know why you're laughing. AI is going to eliminate a biological IQ difference between different races, between different religions, between different countries.
Scott, stop
That's
it,
a big problem.
That's very true. Like, remember how we talked about how AI is actually leveling the playing field?
Right.
So
That's
yeah,
right.
he's making good points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, I would say it's already doing that. It's doing that right now.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. And the more people become dependent on stuff, the more their skills atrophy. Even with myself, I noticed that when it comes to finding places, I rely on GPS all the time, and it used to be a time I was real good at maps and sense of direction and finding places, but the more you depend on it, it becomes a crutch, if you're not.
I don't think that's really the problem, though, Scott. I don't think GPS is a problem. I think the problem is asking Chat GPT to write your papers for you and to do your speeches for you. and
Yeah.
basic epistemology questions and just believing whatever it says. You know, that's the failure that people are doing. I'm very careful when I use mine to try to frame my questions in a way that it doesn't lead me to the answer that it thinks it wants me to get. This is something else about AI. AI is a tool that's designed to please you, you know, and it learns your patterns and it figures out your preferences, and it doesn't always tell the truth. You know, sometimes it tells you what you want to hear,
And that's
you
why
have to specifically tell it not to do that.
That's why I train mine to always give me real feedback, real pushback, and not just agree with me. But I used it to help me file a lawsuit, and I successfully got my money. And so in that sense, it comes in handy. Or even when I'm out here trying to fix my own car, you know, and I run into an issue, a lot of times it can really help me out with stuff that I haven't run across or something that I'm not able to figure out. And that helps me out, you know. So it depends on how you use it.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
For this kind of IQ argument, you're talking about people moving to the higher IQ West. Well, you have Christians from Latin America migrating en masse in the 10 million over the past 5 years coming into the United States. They're coming from Christian countries to the US. So you think that they're coming because it's a Christian country, or is it because of economic opportunity? And many people actually prefer to live in these countries. You have people in the US being passport pros and living in South America because they're tired of this shithole United States. Unfortunately, what it's become, despite the high IQ.
90 seconds.
Why is that, Andrew? Explain it.
We'll switch over to Andrew. I want to remind you folks, please do self-regulate so that we don't have difficulty hearing the speaker. With that, Andrew, the floor is yours.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can make that argument. There are some high IQ Christian nations that move to even higher IQ Christian nations, but none of them move to Muslim nations. You're not getting anybody to move over there, Daniel, because you don't have citizens. You can't create civilizations. He says AI is going to come along and solve it all. You got to be smart enough to use the AI, Daniel. You have to be smart enough to use the AI. Remember, 70 to 85, that's your societies, 70 to 85. Basic jobs, practical skill, routine labor. Doesn't sound like a bunch of automation, robot building, AI savvy individuals to me, Daniel.
I wonder if he's ever been to a Middle Eastern country to know that for sure. Like, it's one thing to read stats and all of that. It's another thing to actually live somewhere.
Well, we don't know that these are stats. Remember, he could have just made all this up. He didn't source anything, right? We just have to believe him.
Well, I know from YouTube. I'm just saying YouTube because I've never been there, but I've seen many places in the Middle East that are actually very developed. So I don't know.
Yeah, the Middle East is not a monolithic. That, you know, there's different countries. There are some countries that are better. There are some countries that are worse. It's just like the Christian countries, as this Muslim guy was trying to tell him. You know, he keeps dodging this issue about why do you think the poor Christians in these South American countries are fleeing if Christianity is so great, and does all this stuff. Like, he keeps dodging that point, you know. That's a good point to illustrate that Christianity is not doing this, my guy. This is secularism that's doing it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
He points out the ideas of IQ. Remember, we have to have a basic minimum for civilization, about 98 to 100 to 115. They don't have it. That's the distinction in our civilizations. And it's because of one value.
What do you guys think Andrew Wilson's IQ is?
Your own family member.
Pretty low.
Just the way the fact that he keeps bringing it up, it's like, I wonder what his IQ is. I bet it's not much higher than the people that he's criticizing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just wanted to
I don't think so. His whole arguing point is very
Mel
simple.
said 6'7".
My whole thing about IQ is, though, you know, what are we basing IQ on? it's
IQ is totally biased. IQ is a non-reliable metric for measuring actual intelligence because it's subjective, right? There's different kinds of intelligence, and there's different ways to measure intelligence. And IQ tests are reliant on cultural themes that are specific to a particular society to judge everyone else off of. It's very ethnocentric, which is why you tend to see people who are not in the majority demographic have lower IQs because their expectations of learning are different.
I would challenge somebody like Andrew Wilson to use his awesome IQ to go live in the fucking rainforest and not get bit by a poisonous snake within 5 minutes and die because he can't navigate the jungle, right?
Right. He acts like because he's Christian, allegedly. Is he Christian? He's Orthodox. He acts like because he's Christian and because he's American, therefore he has a high IQ. Right. I don't think he has an high IQ. I don't think he didn't do anything with AI or technology. Does he even know how to, he said it takes a high IQ to even use ChatGPT. I don't think you have it, and I don't think you could use it correctly. That's the funny thing about his argument,
And I don't think that he's ever developed or invented anything either.
No.
Hell no.
That's it. Simple. They outlawed. It's no good. And even in places where it's legal, we must be adhering to the ecclesiology here, Daniel, because where it's legal, people still ain't banging their cousins. That's your societies, the ones that you build. And what you have built is a collective of some of the dumbest people on planet Earth who are at the mercy of Christians. And don't try to cope and say, no, they're at the mercy of the atheists. Give me a break. Everybody is at the mercy right now of Western nations and Western Christians, which are in them. And that includes Eastern Europe, by the way. So this is all cope. He hasn't refuted any of the arguments. How can he possibly say these low IQ societies, which Islam creates, are better than the ones Christians do on this one principle? I want to hear it.
Go ahead, Dane.
Yeah, that's
what is this word he keeps using? It sounds like he's saying ecclesiology.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. I heard him say that like 4 or 5 times already.
Well, I just looked it up, and ecclesiology is the branch of Christian theology that systematically studies the nature, structure, and mission of the church. That's not remotely related to what he's talking about or how he's using it. So I don't know if he's trying to use a different word, or he's a Orthodox person, so he's a Filbro, so he probably learned some of these words, but I don't think he knows what that means. If I don't know what it means, he definitely doesn't know what it means.
Yeah, ecclesiastical is church-based tradition and interpretation, and and that doesn't have any connection to Islam.
Yeah, I don't know that. I want to see if he uses it one more, because I heard him use it earlier, and I was like, that's a new word. I need to look that up. See, this is what you do when you're honest and you have a high IQ, according to him. When you hear something you don't know, you try to learn it. But
people that have low IQ seem to be correlated with certainty and not being able to be corrected, not being open-minded to change your opinion. These sort of people are just emotionally committed to their beliefs without any sort of skeptical interrogation or exploration of them to even know what the counter arguments are, first of all, because they don't care. They're more about beliefs than, doing the intelligent thing,
Yeah.
No.
The solid RF fiber DAS 4400 is an affordable solution that can be provisioned and commissioned quickly.
Yeah, so you don't need to know how AI works to be able to operate it. That's why it's a evening of the playing field. I don't know if anyone here has used AI, but you don't actually need to know how to program AI to be able to use it. This is something that is very obvious, how AI is going to make IQ differences really irrelevant in the future. And this is what all of the futurists are saying. Second of all, you have Christians in more religious Christian countries going to less religious Christian countries. You have, again, the sub-Saharan Africans, you have the Latin Americans who are Christian going into more secularized nations. So this is, again, an argument for secularism, not for Christianity. You say that there are no Christians moving to Muslim countries. What about all the Christians in Africa, in the Philippines, in Southeast Asia that go to Dubai, that go to the UAE, that go to Saudi? That is a counterexample to your really bizarre claim. You also, again, look at what makes a society great. I think that's the overarching point that is so hard to believe that a Christian would make this argument. I value marriage. I value children. I value having big families. I value belief in God. I believe church attendance or like religious attendance to places of worship. These are the things that I find valuable. And I showed you how within Muslim countries, all of these things are higher despite having a lower IQ, which I'll grant you. Did you say over or 10 seconds?
No, you're good. That was 90 seconds. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, so this is really funny. Imagine the irony of saying this. Well, Christians are moving to more secular countries. So are Muslims. Well, what are you talking about? The mass migration. No one's bitching about the mass migration of the Christians right now.
No, pause.
To Christian
He's
nations.
missed the point. He's completely missed the point. This is not a competition between Christians and Muslims of who's going to the most secular countries. The point that he was making is that you're appealing to secularism, not Christianity.
Yes, exactly.
It's almost like it went completely over his head.
I think he just ignores it on purpose because he understands it, but he's just ignoring it on purpose.
He doesn't have a good counter argument to it, I think, is what the problem is. He's literally doing everything that Daniel said he was going to do.
Yeah. That's what's ironic.
Yeah. All right.
They're bitching about it the other way around. Really interesting, too. He still hasn't refuted the argument. Notice he does everything we get in the. He says, we really value marriage to our first cousins. To our first cousins, we think it's great. It's fantastic. We really value it. It's like, no, that's not a value of mine, sir. And I don't think that that's secular to say. It's not a value.
Yeah, but
he just sounded like Trump, didn't he?
I think he might be losing his own audience a little bit. Like, I don't think his audience thinks that this is a good comeback.
Right, because he's
They're
already
not,
kind of established that Daniel's already established that there's nowhere in the Bible that prohibits that. So
there's nowhere in the Bible that prohibits it. You're not making a Christian-based argument. You're appealing to secularism. You're doing everything the Muslim guy said. And right, he's trying to be funny. You know, he's like, oh, you guys are marrying your cousins. But even the audience is realizing that's not a counter argument to anything he said, you know?
And also the guy conceded to that. He said, I'll give you that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he can't even use that as a weapon anymore.
Right.
Yeah. This is not going very well for him.
Yeah, he's falling down.
Of Christians do not want to have sex with their family members. And by the way, can you please explain, even though I've asked you many times, how it could be possible, sir, that you create better societies than Christians where everywhere Christians go based on their ecclesiology, their ecclesiastic authority, the fact
ecclesiology.
Now, what does that mean again, y'all?
According to the dictionary, it is the branch of Christian theology that systematically studies the nature, structure, and mission of the church. This has nothing to do with Islam. He doesn't have an ecclesiology. Only an Orthodox Christian would have an ecclesiology. So why are you using that word? I don't know that he knows what ecclesiology means. Does he mean epistemology?
Yeah, I mean, ecclesia comes from, what is that Greek word that means congregation or church?
Yeah.
And then logos, I guess, is the ology part. Logos.
It's a book in the Bible.
Ecclesiastes,
you know.
It's like study the Bible. Yeah.
This has nothing to do with Islam. So why would you accuse him of, you know, he can't even explain from his ecclesiology. He doesn't have an ecclesiology, dipshit.
He should bring that up. I would definitely throw that up at him because that kind of annoys me too.
I don't think anyone in that room besides I don't think anyone in that room knows what that word means, including Andrew Wilson.
Right.
Because if he did, he wouldn't be using it that way. I don't think his opponent knows what it means either, so he probably can't defend it, and the audience definitely doesn't know what it means. So
No.
yeah, it's kind of a filler word that he's using to sound like a high IQ Phil bro, but he's just talking over everybody. He's not making any sense.
No, not at all.
That they're Christians, inbreeding goes down, making sure that the IQ at least sits somewhere around can function. Can you please, for the love of all that is good, I don't even care if you Google it at this point, just contend with the argument. How are you making a better society with inbreeding and your Muslim values, which over 1,400 years have produced the dumbest societies on planet Earth?
Wait, let me ask the audience a question here. I'm sorry. Let me ask the audience a question.
Appeal to the audience.
Are there electric cars being developed in Latin America? Are there new AI technologies being developed in Brazil and Argentina? Are they being developed in sub-Saharan Africa, these Christian countries? Because they don't have cousin marriage, do they, Andrew? So why aren't they developing all of these technologies, these amazing technologies, AI, nuclear weapons, fighter jets? I didn't see Brazil or Honduras producing any fighter jets, Andrew. Is it because they don't have cousin marriage? Why? They should be having this brain blasting IQ in all these Christian countries. Why is that not the case? If Christianity is the secret sauce, Andrew, then tell me why these countries don't have those technologies. Explain it. Because the reason, I'll give you a spoiler alert, because it's not Christianity. It's not Christianity and cousin marriage that causes this discrepancy. And if you're so high IQ in the United States, how are you not able to figure out birth rate, fertility rate? Why are these countries going extinct? Why is Europe going extinct?
Yeah, that's good. Just he keeps bringing up the fact that you're borrowing that from atheistic secular society, not from Christianity.
Just one correction. Brazil does have fighter jets. I suppose the argument he's going to make is, well, they weren't developed in Brazil. They were developed in Europe. And that would be fair too. But I just, he said Brazil doesn't have fighter jets. They actually do. But yes, his overall argument is, I don't see how Andrew Wilson has a good comeback to any of this.
He's just gonna say you're screwing your cousin again.
That's pretty much
but he already conceded that, though. He was like,
exactly.
You're right, but why is that wrong according to the Bible? Is what his
exactly
follow-up would be,
Yeah, and that's something they share in common is some of the Old Testament, at least.
Yeah, because what he said. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
He's basically just saying, yeah, that's true, but like he believes in what Allah tells him to do, and Allah's values are completely different. So he just keeps reiterating to him that your beliefs have nothing to do with what God actually says. It's all coming from secularism, and he's right about that. Because if you were to be following the Old Testament and everything in the Bible, you would basically be like the Amish, in a way.
Yeah. You would be more like the Muslims, actually. Your society would be more like Islamic society. What they're really doing is they're talking past each other, because Andrew Wilson is trying to make the point that Christian societies are better because we have all of these things. He's not acknowledging that all these things come from secularism. But Daniel is basically saying that's not what makes for a better society. The better society is the one that's closest to God, not the one that has the most money or the one that has the most technology or anything like that. And so, they're using the word better, but they're defining it differently. And predictably, Andrew Wilson is defining better as the things that correlate to secularism, not Christianity.
Exactly. Yeah. See, you said it way better than me.
Yeah. Well, no, we just saying, we're saying the same thing in a different way.
Christian countries in Europe the population is on a nosedive despite the high IQ. They can't even figure out how to reproduce at replacement levels. Gee, I guess IQ leads to extinction because it's correlated, right? The higher IQ you have, the lower the fertility rate. So it seems like the more Christianity you have, the more chances you have of going extinct, Andrew. Explain that for us.
Wow. Ooh. So this is sad, because this guy actually understands statistics much better than Andrew Wilson does. He just demonstrated a correlation that, according to Andrew Wilson's logic, proves that Islam is better than Christianity. because they reproduce more and that the Christian societies are going extinct. I don't think they're actually going extinct, but the correlation between lower birth rates and higher IQs, that shouldn't exist if under Andrew Wilson's model,
Right.
Daniel thinks that having a higher birth rate and reproducing more in marriage and having more kids, that's what creates the better society, no matter what condition the society ends up in, or how many people you have to murder, or how many people you have to sexually assault, or, lock in child marriages, which is what Islam is about, by the way. No, that doesn't matter. What matters is just producing more people. That's what this dipshit thinks makes for a better society. And so from that angle, they're just talking past each other again. But Andrew Wilson has no answer to this, because he's defining a better society by how secularists define better society, not religion.
Exactly. It's missing the point. Totally missing the point.
Trouble. Because if it's the case that your IQ stays the same and then collectively secularist IQ goes up, what's to stop them from wiping all of you out and you can't do anything about it? Your argument, unfortunately, destroys you. When you say, well, wait a second, what about these South American nations, right? Are they? Yes, they're way more advanced than your nations. Way more. Not even in the same universe more advanced than your nations. Yes. The truth of the matter is that the reason Islam creates worse societies, we can bicker about theology, right? Hey, I'm sure Daniel could probably get me on some points there, but you can't bicker on the facts. And he hasn't contended with the argument still. He's asked me a bunch of questions. Did you actually hear an argument, anybody? Because there isn't an argument.
I did.
The reason
I heard a pretty good argument.
Society.
Yeah, I haven't heard an argument from
I haven't heard a counter argument.
Right.
Me neither.
That's the thing that's missing here. He's not offered a rebuttal to this notion that he's appealing to secularism.
It seems to me the Muslim has a higher IQ.
He probably does. He was probably educated in the United States or in Europe, because most educated Muslims are. I don't know how educated he is. I don't know anything about this guy, but he at least knows the basics of how statistics works, which suggests to me that he has a little bit more of an education than Andrew Wilson has.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It is because they have a doctrine for cousin marriage. Now, notice Daniel didn't say, no, you can't fuck your first cousin and marry her. No. He didn't say that because he probably believes that you should. He probably believes it's fine. He probably believes something about like it protects inheritance or something like this, right? The thing is, though, is like, can we please get an argument for how a society that doesn't at least have 100 IQ so we can have middle management isn't better than, well, donkey pull cart? That's what I want to know. And please, for the love of God, sir, when you say it's not because of Christianity, the entire historical record disagrees with you. When pagans were at 20 to 30%, guess what? It was Christians who brought that down. And by the way, in all of the Muslim shared nations with Christians and Muslims, they're always lower IQ than the Christians because they fuck their cousins.
In time, we'll go over to Daniel, 90 seconds as well.
Again, throughout Christian history, you had sub 100 IQ. Throughout Christian history, it's only because of the Flynn effect in recent centuries that you have this change. So all of the criticisms that you're applying to Islam apply to your past civilization. How did you have a Christian civilization with sub 100 IQ, Andrew? Was the Byzantine Empire a S-hole? They had sub 100 IQ. How did they have a civilization without having positive 100 IQ? You can't explain that. You can have a beautiful, expansive civilization and empire with sub 100 IQ because there's other values that are significant to human existence. Values like marriage, family.
Right. That's what I was getting at, is that it seems like a value discrepancy here. Like Andrew Wilson is all on that, capitalism kick, that, the higher the GDP, the better it's doing economically, the more infrastructure, the more this and that is the objective proof of a better country. But that's just the value judgment that's being projected on that estimation. And so Daniel, he's trying to tell him, look, it's not about that. It's who's closer to God, who's doing God's will is the better country. And it seems like the Christian should be about that, not about the secular, accounting of what considered a good country.
If I was the Muslim, I would be hammering him on that much harder. I would be like, again, you haven't supported that this is even a Christian value at all. Where does your Bible say any of this? Can where does Jesus or Paul or anyone say that a society is better when it has more technology or science, or when it lets people have more rights, or when it lets women have more rights, or any of that? In fact, doesn't your Bible say the opposite? It sounds like you don't really appreciate Christian conservative values at all. Your entire argument is that the better society is the one that's closest to secularism. That's what the Muslim guy should be doing.
Exactly.
He's doing it a little bit, but not enough.
Right. And, ironically, the crowd, I just have a feeling the only thing that stuck in their mind was, America good, Muslims are evil, they do incest, end of story. That's all they do.
If I were to, if the crowd was actually intelligent, they should realize how bad Andrew Wilson's argument is. And it seems like some of them do, like he's not getting a lot of applause and cheers anymore, if you notice towards the end.
Right, I noticed that. Yeah.
So I think they're starting to realize that this is not the strongest. They want to agree with him, but he's not doing a very good job because he keeps harping back on that one point, and he's not addressing any of the other guys. He's not doing any counter arguments, we're
2.5 hours in, and this guy keeps saying, "You fuck your cousin." That's all he said.
Continually.
Now, unfortunately, because they are all probably racists who hate Muslims, they're going to say these cousin fuckers, they do a lot more executions and they live in a worse society, and we don't want to be anything like them. So we're going to cheer for Andrew Wilson anyway, even though he's making a terrible argument.
Exactly.
What seems to be what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's what's going on.
God, worshiping God. You don't need to be a positive 100 IQ genius to be able to love and be devoted to God. I think that is actually more of the Christian message than this kind of IQ chauvinism that you're presenting. This doesn't seem Christian at all.
Wow. Okay, I take it back. He is doing it.
Yeah, he did it.
He's doing exactly what I said he should be doing.
And then I wonder why the audience laughed. It's probably because they have a low IQ.
They could be laughing due to being uncomfortable with realizing that that was a good comeback too.
Yeah,
like it could be like that nervous shifting in your seat laughter. Like, well,
yeah,
he got you there. It could be that too.
And a lot of these people they worship conservative or Republican Jesus.
Right.
Like, so when he talks about like what Jesus really talked about, which was community and the way to
God
heaven,
and worshiping God and following the commandments, and all that
following
stuff.
the commandments, and it's not about wealth and being rich and all that.
Yeah, nope, they don't like that.
No, they don't like that.
As a matter of fact, didn't Jesus say you have to leave all your possessions behind to follow him?
Yeah, correct.
He told he didn't necessarily say that. He asked the one guy asked him, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus responds, "You must follow the commandment." He then tells them which ones. And then the guy says, "Well, I've done all this." And then Jesus responds, "If you want to be perfect in heaven, then sell all your possessions and give to the needy." And this made the man sad because he was rich. And so I guess the moral of the story, the disciples go on to ask him, Jesus says, this is very difficult for some people because they love money, and if the wealthy, it's difficult. It's difficult for a rich man to enter heaven is the point he was trying to make there. I don't know that was a commandment that was necessarily intended for all of the disciples, but it was certainly implied that it's better to be not rich than it is to be rich.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that was always my interpretation of that.
But you do see the reoccurring theme that it's more profitable to store up riches in heaven, so to speak, than material gain. Even with the proverb about what is it to gain the whole world and lose your soul, etc.
Right.
So I think that we see throughout the whole Bible that the emphasis was never on riches.
Right. Not riches on earth. Yeah. That's the idea, is that you should avoid the worldly things and leave all this stuff behind because it goes away. your life goes away, you know, so you can be as rich as you want, but you're still going to die, you know. You need to store up your treasures in heaven. So the emphasis is on that. It's not, I didn't take it so much as a condemnation of being rich per se, although, you know, it is strongly implied that the more likely you are to be rich, the less heavenly or the less godly you are, you know. And so he says it's very difficult. He didn't say it was impossible, but he says it's very difficult.
Right. But you don't never really hear guys like him, you know, bring that up. They're always all for the money hoarding and annihilating others and dominating everyone else.
Well, he can't bring it up because he doesn't know anything about the Bible. And when you look at some of the televangelists like Joel Osteen, he knows the Bible, but he doesn't talk about those parts. You know, he talks about the parts that he thinks, you know, it's so watered. Have you ever watched like a Joel Osteen church on Sunday?
Oh yeah, like years ago though. I stopped watching that dude a long time ago.
But it's so generic. It's barely even Christianity. You know, it's like something that anyone who's a good orator could do, like a self-help thing. You know, and he throws in God and Jesus every now and then.
Yeah. I noticed.
But that's all he's really doing. He's not actually preaching the gospel as taught by Jesus, you know. So
but that's just kind of what gets under my skin though about people who follow guys like freaking Andrew. What's his name? Oh yeah, it is Andrew, right?
Andrew Wilson, yeah.
Because like the guy doesn't even know the Bible at all. And I've seen other segments where he was asked specifically about certain things in the Bible, and he straight up had no idea. Absolutely no idea. And it makes you wonder, why would you follow a guy and just believe him when he clearly doesn't even know what Christianity is even about?
The thing that Andrew Wilson seems to be arguing for is very close to what Richard Dawkins, who's an atheist, is arguing for. He calls it cultural Christianity. And this is why he's a piece of shit too, by the way. I don't know if you guys knew that. Richard Dawkins is a huge piece of shit. He thinks he hates Muslims and he doesn't love Christians, but he likes Christian culture, or I should say white European, you know, culture is really what he's doing there. He's saying Christian culture. He's not a Christian. He doesn't even believe in God. He's a complete atheist. So, but he's making the same arguments as this atheist is doing. And so he's falling right into the Muslim guy's trap of appealing to atheism. When your argument sounds more like Richard Dawkins, who's an atheist, you're not appealing to Christianity.
Exactly.
You know, Richard Dawkins is someone who rails against using pronouns because it doesn't reflect the biological sex of a person, and that's
which is stupid because that's not what it's for.
Right, and he says, well, it's just not science, so I don't. Yet he gives his chatbot a pronoun of a her because he relates to his chatbot as a real conscious woman.
But also, he's just wrong. It's a category error. It is science. It's just not biological science. It's part of the social science. It's gender psychology. Gender has nothing to do with gender relates to biological sex, but only in kind of an abstract way. It's a social construct, you know, just like race, by the way. Race is not biological either. I bet he would admit to that.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
But he doesn't have a problem with referring to people by different races or ethnicities because he knows it's a cultural construct. Well, same thing with gender. So why are you trying to correlate gender to sex? Because you don't like it. That's why, because you're transphobic.
Argument from Icky.
Yeah.
Yep.
Seeing Christians, you keep talking about like donkeys pulling carts. Go to the Philippines, bro. They're Christians. Go to the Philippines, go to some of these African countries, go to Botswana, Christian country, they have donkeys pulling. So their Christianity and their lack of cousin marriage is not helping them. So this is a really bizarre argument, and all of you can laugh and chuckle it and laugh it up, but it doesn't change how stupid this argument is. If you have, if IQ is this end all be all of civilization, and the end-all be-all of progress, then why is the West going in a nosedive? All the things, Andrew, that you beautifully criticize about the West, the LGBTQ, the lack of marriage. That's happening in these non-cousin marriage countries. So clearly having the highest IQ. So clearly IQ is not the end all be all.
Number one, why does the moderator keep interrupting him, telling him how much time?
Yes, I've noticed that.
Just let him talk, and when his time is up, say time is up. He hasn't been doing that to Andrew, I don't think,
at all.
You know, so the moderator's clearly biased.
And he's a Christian, you know.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Nell made an interesting comment a minute ago that is true, and I do want to address it. Gender can be broken down into different categories. Gender identity does have a neurological, biological component to it. Yes, it does. However, gender identity is separate from biology. Something can have a biological component to it, but it's not identical with biology. That's the point I'm trying to make. And what Richard Dawkins is trying to say is that gender and sex are the same thing. And if you're not calling them the same thing, you're misusing them. Well, that's not true, because gender identity has a neurological, biological component. It also has other components to it that we may not know about. It may have a social component. In fact, it does have a social component. You know, gender identity, gender roles, by the way, a lot of that comes from religion. You know, masculinity and femininity are socially derived. They mean different things in different countries. You know, you can act a certain way. By the way, in some of these Islamic countries, it's not unusual to see two men walking down the street holding hands.
Right.
We would call that gay in our society, right?
Or even how they greet, even how some people greet each other in different countries,
right?
With a kiss and stuff like that. We would, in our country, consider that gay.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of white people in America, you know, they think it's gay or effeminate for guys to use lotion. Well, in the Black community, we use lotion because, you know, we could have ashy skin. So that's a cultural thing, you know. Maybe you should use, you know that expression, black don't crack. Maybe it's because we use lotion, you know. So maybe white people should stop thinking it's gay or effeminate to use. The point I'm trying to make here is a lot of this stuff is just in the head, and a lot of it is derived from society and culture, and not necessarily biology. Some of it is derived from biology. It's complex, you know, but it's not as simple as saying gender equals sex. And
it's just a lot.
Yeah.
Everything's a lot more nuanced than these type of guys are trying to present. They always make it seem like everything just fits into this category or that category, and that's just really not the nature of reality at all.
Right. Yeah, and that was a good point. Follow up by Nell as well. That she was pointing out that the biological component is indicative in the fact that trans people can't just will themselves to not be trans, kind of like being gay. There's a biological component to that too, right? I'm not saying that being trans is doesn't have a biological influence. I'm saying gender identity itself is not equal to sex, is what I'm trying to say. And so, like, it's not influenced by biological sex. We're kind of saying the same thing, but we're saying it in a different way. I'm saying that it is unreasonable to expect someone to report their gender based on their biology, based on their sexual anatomy. Maybe anatomy is a better word. Anatomy is not an indicator of gender. They're two separate things, right? Your gender identity may be influenced by biological factors, but it's not what kind of parts you have. So
and
I think we're probably on the same page there.
And Nell, get a load of this. I was called a transphobe today. Would you think I was a transphobe, Nell, based on what you know about me? It's just silly.
Over. Let's take a look at the first straw man. Did I ever say IQ is the end all be all? No, of course not. Straw man still hasn't told us how Muslims build better civilizations when they produce 70 to 85 IQ individuals who are basically only suited for basic jobs. Okay, still hasn't told us that. He can't tell you. He can't tell you that these are better civilizations. The reason that he can't is because they're not. They're clearly not. And the thing that's really funny about
this is like, bad argument.
Let's just grant it. Let's just grant that, just for a second, we'll just grant Daniel's argument. We'll just pretend, well, you know, it's okay to have a bunch of 80 IQ people who can't seem to get past primitive technology and are just day laborers. But you know what? We don't do anything degenerate. Fucking your cousin's degenerate, Daniel. That's
Here we go
degenerate.
again.
Yeah, maybe don't.
Yeah, see, he's crashing out, and again he's not addressing the fact that it's supported in Scripture. So
At this point, he's just gonna keep saying the same shit. He ends every freaking rebuttal with that same thing.
Yeah.
Also, he started by saying, "You're making a straw man argument. I never said IQ was the end all and be all, but you kind of are. That's the entirety of your argument.
Exactly.
Yeah. You haven't deviated from that at all.
Exactly.
So it's not a straw man argument. It seems to be your argument."
God, typical.
This guy, man.
Have hookers and OnlyFans girls, but fucking your first cousin is degenerate. So by the way, and let me just point this out, and this is really, really important to point out. He has not made an argument about how they produce a better civilization. Only I have. My argument is simple and still stands unopposed. Where Christianity goes, incest decreases based on canon law. Where Islam goes, incest increases based on their canon law. Therefore, where Christians go, society gets better. Where Islam goes, it gets worse. An argument would sure be swell.
90 seconds, we'll switch it to Daniel. I
say
gave
something?
an argument that you failed to respond to. I said that.
He kind of did give an argument to that already, because he said in comparison, it's not important what secularists want. It's important what God wants. And so if they fashion their society based on God's will, who's to say that that's not a better society?
Yeah, is God a degenerate? Is your God a degenerate? After all, he allowed it. And, of course, that's the Old Testament. That's just the Old Testament.
Well, that's the argument Daniel should be making. Which I'm going to stop criticizing him, because every time I say he should be making this argument, he then proceeds.
He may actually do that right now.
He may do that.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Hopefully he does.
That Islam, when we look at the statistics, when we look at all these countries on these metrics of marriage, birth rate, household size, belief in God, conviction in God. I thought we were believers. Conviction in God is higher in Muslim countries. Holding on to your religious practice is more in Muslim countries. Look at the levels of drug abuse, alcohol abuse being lower in Muslim countries. These are all values that are good, and we see them associated with Islam, not Christianity. That was my argument. So you can't deny those statistics. So you keep claiming that I have no argument. I clearly do have an argument, and I refuted your argument. If IQ is the end-all be-all, your entire argument is on the basis of IQ. You haven't said, you just say, marrying your cousin, effing your cousin, that is degenerate. On the basis of what? It's not on the basis of your Bible. It's just a degree. Yeah, laugh it up.
No, he's right.
I do want to make sure we can hear the speaker.
Yeah, he's right.
He's right. And Andrew Wilson's entire argument depends only on the audience laughing at the absurdity of defending cousin marriage, but they don't have a biblical argument against it. There's no Christian argument against this, which is what the Muslim guy is pointing out. And so Andrew Wilson doesn't have a counter argument to that.
Yeah.
He can just laugh. They can just laugh.
Yeah, both of them are just laughing, but both of them are just making the point for the secularist.
Right.
This is why we don't want religious theocracy, because of this bullshit right here.
Yeah.
We know better.
Now I can answer before you hit play again.
Mm-hmm.
I can answer this Muslim guy about how it's better to not have incest, and it's better to have scientific progression, and that's how I define better. Why is your God better? Why is a God who has his people have higher death rates and lower lifespans and poorer education? Why is that better? I could make that argument from a secular point of view, and then I don't think the Muslim guy would have an answer for it. He could just say it's better because God says so. Well, that's not demonstrably better. Your God's a piece of shit, apparently.
Right.
Life without God is much better in all of the ways that we can measure that don't appeal to the existence of the God.
It was so funny. Like I heard Andrew Wilson argue with some atheist. I think it was Pine Creek Doug a while back. And basically, I think Pine Creek, the atheist, was bringing up about stuff like that, like some of the moral problems found in the Bible or whatever. And all Andrew could say was, well, how do you know it's wrong? You know, whose standard are you saying it's wrong from? Your own personal opinion? You know, yet they're both sitting here just assuming that it's absurd based on what? At least the Muslim is basing it on scripture, but Andrew Wilson is not basing that on scripture. He's saying it's just, he's just appealing to the laughs and the absurdity of it.
I do find it kind of crazy that science is considered secularism. Like, who makes these categories? Because at the end of the day, who's to say that this God in the Bible doesn't believe in science, because everything's, after all, created by this God, right? So if he really wanted to make a good argument, he should argue for why a Christian God wouldn't be against that science, because it's destructive, right? It's not good for the outcome.
Well, what they'll say, like, there's a lot of Christians who do make that argument. They'll say, well, science is a comes out of society. Yeah, science, not only does it come from God, but science was developed by the natural philosophers who were all identified as Christian. Even like Isaac Newton, for example, it was a Christian. And they'll always use that argument, which is pretty lame, but they'll always say, you know, hey, they were Christians and they did science, so science is a Christian thing.
Yeah, that the lameness of the argument stems from the fact that almost everyone in these Christian societies was Christian, because at that time in the Middle Ages, as he pointed out, they had basically apostasy laws in Christianity as well. If you weren't Christian, if you were a heretic or a blasphemer, you got the death penalty, right? So of course Isaac Newton was a Christian. Of course Galileo pretended to be a Christian, even though he was doing things heretical to the church, like science and disproving the Bible, you know. But Christians, they want to claim all these people as, well, they were Christian too. Well, they were forced to live in a Christian society that didn't necessarily allow you to not be Christian. You know, they just happened to be doing science, but they were probably less devout in their Christianity than everyone else around them, which is the thing that allowed them to question nature and to question reality and to, you know, to come up with heliocentrism and things that were against the church. They leave all that out.
Oh, of course. And they forget that the church ended up punishing all those people in some form or another for their science. You know? So,
so it didn't come from Christianity. You can be a Christian and be a scientist, and you can be a Christian and be a good scientist, but science didn't come from Christianity. It came from skepticism.
Right, because I mean, at the end of the day, the church condemned it. But I mean, if I was a Christian, I would basically say that, you know, the church has evolved. And since the Bible doesn't say anything against or for incest, we know through evolution, which is really just observation, the effects of everything that we do, that we shouldn't do it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
but see, that would be falling into the Muslim guy's argument, though, because that's exactly the argument he predicted Andrew Wilson would make. It was appealing to science and skepticism and atheism, basically, you know. Like, if Andrew Wilson, he can't admit that, because if he admits that, he's admitting that it's not coming from Christianity. He wants it to come from Christianity, but he has nothing to prove.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of the fault of Christians. They set themselves up for that, if you think about it.
Oh, yeah.
By condemning science in the first place. So now they're stuck with it.
Up, okay? Because as I said, you are arguing on the basis of a decree that was made. What is the actual moral? Can you make a moral argument, Andrew, other than, oh, it lowers IQ? There are many things that lower IQ. Like I said, interbreeding with other races, interracial marriage results in lower IQ. So is that degenerate as well? Why can't you answer these questions, Andrew, instead of repeating, oh, you don't have an argument. You haven't responded to my argument. Okay, yeah, you've said that 10 times.
And I don't understand how true that is about interracial marriage. I mean, my daughter was honor roll student every year, and her mother was pure African from Kenya. So
yeah,
how does that result? And I know she didn't get that high IQ for me.
I'm not, as a product of many races, I'm not going to appeal to anecdotes and talk about or try to, try to say what my IQ is. I don't even know my IQ. Right. So that's irrelevant. But what I will say is that this is predicated on the theory, the racist theory that he brought up earlier, which Andrew Wilson should believe in, that, certain races demonstrate higher IQs than others. And so if you believe that and your entire argument is based on IQ resulting in a more prosperous society, then only the races with the high IQs should be with these other races. The question of whether or not it's true is kind of aside. They're both granting that it's true. They both believe it because they're both racist. Well, Andrew Wilson's a racist. I don't know if the Muslim guy actually believes this or not. He could just be doing a like a devil's advocate type argument, or he could believe it. I don't know enough about him, but Andrew Wilson, no doubt, believes that this is true, right? So the question of whether it's true or not is kind of aside. If you've already granted that it's true, then why aren't you making an argument that's appealing to what you think is true? Why aren't you advocating for segregation and not, interracial marriage being illegal like it was before? He hasn't answered that.
Yeah, and he should actually answer that. I agree with the other guy.
Any answer he gives, he's screwed, because he doesn't want to admit to being a racist. And if he says, yeah, I think interracial marriage should be illegal, well, then you've just outed yourself as a racist. Yeah. But at the same time, he can't say that it's bad either, because he believes that white people are smarter than black people. He believes that Jews are smarter than non-Jews. He probably believes that Asians are smarter than white people. I don't know. He believes all this racist stuff. So, if you're appealing to what is good and beneficial for society, and IQ is your entire metric for that, you should be against interracial marriage, or by your own logic.
Yeah, by your own logic. Yeah. Right. Be consistent.
Respond to the points that I'm making.
Well, here's the thing that's funny, right? The points that you're making are in question form. Question form is not an argument. They're questions, not arguments. Perhaps you should go to a higher IQ school.
I'm sorry. Isn't this a question?
And this is super important to point out.
Isn't this a question and response section? Like, aren't they supposed to give rebuttals and then?
Yes.
I thought they were supposed to be asking questions and then, responding to them.
Right.
He already gave the argument. You didn't address the argument. Now he's asking you the question. You're saying, well, the question's not an argument. So you're just not going to answer.
Yeah, that's all he's doing.
He's just tap dancing to try to not answer these questions.
Yeah, he's a runner.
I have what's called an argument, which means I made an argument. That argument needs to be refuted. Now, I would be happy to sit here and answer all of your questions today, Daniel, but you requested specifically a forum where that's not the case, where instead we do 2-minute monologues, probably because I would tear you to pieces in a Socratic method. But I would have been happy to do that too. People always misjudge. They always seem to think, well, Andrew just steamrolls debates, and he's terrible at these long-form formal debates. It's where I fucking thrive. And let me just point this out. Has anybody heard an argument yet? He just says, well, there's better families and stuff. It's like, okay, but you need to give us a standard, an argument standard for why it would be that these have better societies than societies which can have, skilled labor and middle management at the very least. That's all I'm asking for. I'll concede. Hey, we've got some problems. We've got the OF. We've got the prostitution. We've got some pretty horrible things going on over here. And we have high IQ enemies that require high IQ enemies, right? And they're not getting it from Islam. So my question just is this again. It's very simple. How do you make societies that can even combat this to begin with when you basically live in the Stone Age in comparison with technological distinction? You live in the Stone Age. Islam will get AI. We already got AI. What are you talking about? So I just want an argument. That's it. I want to hear an argument for why Islamic nations are better than Christian nations based on the fact that they go, and everywhere they go, they increase cousin fucking, and we don't, which lowers the collective IQ. I would actually like a refutation there at some point.
Okay, here is the argument. I'll put it in.
Yeah, he's addressed this a million times, and it's because Andrew doesn't really have a comeback.
Yeah, he's just going to keep asserting that he didn't do it.
And then he turns around and asks him a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not, you can't ask questions. Questions aren't argument. So answer this.
Right. Right.
That's also crazy. I'm curious, what do you guys think he means when he says high IQ enemies? Who's he talking about?
He's probably talking about atheists.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought too. I wasn't sure.
The evil secular people.
The evil scientists
that have a higher IQ than you.
Than us. And both of us combined. Yeah. me and the Muslim, we ought to combine forces against these people.
May our IQ combine.
Yeah, we combine it.
By our IQs combined. Muslim. Christian.
Muslim,
I am Captain Religion.
There you go.
Sorry, that's an old
form, so you can follow it. Take notes, Andrew. Premise 1. Okay, societies that encourage marriage, or religions that encourage more better marriages, higher quality marriages, less being sluts, okay, less prostitution, societies that have bigger and more healthy families, societies that have more devotion to God, religions that encourage societies that are more cohesive, are standing for each other in a kind of nationalistic or communal way. That religion that encourages more of that is going to be better, is going to be a better religion. Premise 2, Islam does encourage all of those things that I've mentioned, and the stats I presented, that's premise 2. Therefore, conclusion, by deductive inference, Islam is a better religion than Christianity. That is the argument. The problem with your argument is that you say premise 1, societies that have higher IQ are going to be better. Premise 2, Christianity, because it bans cousin marriage, is going to lead to societies with higher IQ. Therefore, Christianity is better. My rebuttal of this dumb argument is that premise 1 is wrong. Premise 1 is a false premise. That higher IQ does not lead to better societies. And as proof, I pointed to the United States of America. I pointed to many Christian countries that have low IQ, and you haven't denounced those countries. I gave many reasons why your premise 1 is false. That is my rebuttal of your argument.
Yeah, and I think he that's a good rebuttal.
Yeah, it is.
Kind of what Bryce said he should respond that way, and he actually did it. And Andrew really has no comeback but to keep talking about, cousin humping and stuff. Like,
he keeps forgetting the fact that this is about traditional Abrahamic religious values, right?
Right.
Let me ask you guys a question before you go on.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think is the worst person between these two?
I would say it's Andrew Wilson, honestly.
What about you, Scott?
I don't know. They seem to stand up for some pretty atrocious stuff. So
yeah, I think that Andrew Wilson's performance and personality makes him look like the worst person. I think deep down, when it comes to fundamental beliefs, Daniel's the worst person because he actually believes everything that he's saying. Andrew Wilson doesn't. He's bullshitting you half the time. He believes some of it, but he doesn't think that we should live in a country where, we should denounce capitalism and we should denounce all these ungodly things. He doesn't want to live in a country where there's no OnlyFans. He's probably on OnlyFans. I bet he has 2 or 3 subscriptions to it.
Oh, yeah.
But see, that makes him the worst person to me because I think that somebody like the Muslim, he probably believes what he believes due to his conditioning and upbringing. But I don't think that he has a bad soul, so to speak, right? If he was in a different environment, he probably would turn out different. But the fact that Andrew Wilson knows that his nationalist beliefs and that Christianity is practically full of shit, the fact that he knows that but wants to sell himself as such, I think that's worse. It just shows the hypocrisy because at the very least, that other guy is not a hypocrite. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that'd be an interesting debate to have. I agree with everything you said, by the way. Andrew Wilson's definitely more of a liar and a grifter and bullshitting people. I don't know. I think that because he's lying about a lot of this stuff, I don't know if he actually would want to live in a society that kills as many people as the Muslims do, the more religious society. I think that the Muslim thinks that that's good. You know?
Yeah, and when it comes to the Muslim religion, obviously I'm in complete opposition, and I think that Christianity would definitely be kind of better if I had to choose between the two. But yeah,
I mean, there's versions of Christianity where you could say it's wrong to kill gay people. Christianity is a internally incoherent religion because it's full of self-contradictions. Islam is fairly consistent. You know, that's the danger of Islam. The danger of Islam is the consistency of it. This is the one area where I think Christianity, because it's so internally incoherent and it's evolved, that's what helps life be better for people who are not religious. That's the thing that makes it better, because there's different interpretations, there's different schools of thought, there's liberal versions of it. There's, you know, we're just going to do the Christ parables. We're not going to do the Old Testament stuff. And so I think living in an Islamic society where if you're following it by the book, I think it would result in a worse society.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that this Muslim guy believes that makes a better society.
Yeah, that's a good
We don't have murder in our country. We just execute everybody. It's a better society.
Yeah.
But I digress. Let's get to the
he's definitely ignorant and conditioned for sure.
Yeah. Get it?
Yeah. Let's go through this premise at a time. First and foremost, the entailment of your argument would be that low IQ societies are better. It would be that lower IQ societies are actually better, Daniel.
That's actually
which is
not
hilarious.
That's not
Remember, you rejected that as being a false premise. P1, he says societies require higher quality marriages. They fuck their first cousins. How could that possibly be a higher quality marriage, Daniel?
See, this is the dishonesty I don't like with Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
This is why it's easier to hate him over the other guy.
Yeah.
Is, you know, it's this kind of stuff that, and this is the thing about Marquette that gets on my nerves too. And we'll be talking about him next. He does similar things. And
just wait until you check that guy out. Oh my God, you're gonna want to.
Oh yeah, you're gonna snap, Bryce. You'll snap when you see this douchebag.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Reject premise one. I'm saying your argument's not even sound. How can you have in any way, shape, or it's totally invalid. I reject it as even being a sound premise. How could this qualitatively be better to have genetic deficiencies compounded over 1,000 years to the point where your civilization literally requires the benevolence of all other civilizations so that they just don't wipe you out because you're not technologically advanced to do anything about it. You're not technologically advanced. And by the way, when I say technology, I'm not just talking about like lasers and phasers and guns and things like that. Remember, things like philosophy, that's a technology, right? Things like language is technology. Things like social communications and businesses and infrastructure, these are technologies. You can't have these technologies when your IQ is 70 to 85.
He doesn't know what these words mean.
You need to have the administrative.
He has no idea.
He doesn't know what any of these words mean. First of all, he tried to speak about validity and soundness. He doesn't know what either one of those words mean. But he started with a straw man argument. Both premises were neither one of those were in the other guy's argument. His argument isn't that low IQ societies are better. It's that Muslim societies are better. He already pointed out low IQ Christian societies that are not better according to Andrew Wilson's model. So obviously that's not his argument, but he needed to he needed to reformulate it that way because he can't actually refute the guy's real argument that Muslim societies are more godly than Christian societies, and being more godly equals better. He can't speak to that, Andrew Wilson, because to him, better means more technology, which apparently he doesn't know what technology means either, because technology doesn't mean philosophy and technology doesn't mean language. Those are not related.
The thing is, Andrew would have to admit that Christianity is violent according to the Bible. And the only difference I see between these two guys is that the Muslim
takes his religion seriously.
He takes his religion serious, and that's it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why that Muslim told me, Christians are weak. We just bend with the wind, And he says, and that's why we're going to defeat all y'all at the end of the day.
They're weak in some areas. I would say Muslims are weak in other areas, but
oh yeah. Yeah.
And skilled labor class, and that requires at least 85 to 100. Most of these places don't have it, but 100 to 115, that's pretty standard for these things. So it's like, look, how could you possibly say that the societies Christians build aren't better on a single principle, that we outlaw first cousin marriage? When you outlaw first cousin marriage, you see the collective IQ begin to increase, right? And you see that these technologies no longer unavailable. Technologies, medicines for children, things like this are now available. His argument, his entire argument is actually we should keep our society super low IQ, because if we keep them low IQ, well, they'll have more qualitative marriages and stuff. What? What?
We have to switch it over at 90 seconds. Go ahead, Daniel.
No, I didn't say having lower IQ means you'll have more marriage. You don't understand causality. So the question is, you had the vast majority of Christian history at sub 100 IQ. Your assumption, the premise that you're using, is that you have to have a over 100 IQ average in your society to build civilization and to be functional. But this is disproven by your own religious history. This is disproven by all of Christendom prior to 1800 or even 1900, the 1900s actually. So just like Christians could have civilization for 1900 years, Muslims have also had their civilizations that were also thriving, that also had conquest, that also had art, literature, poetry, all kinds of beautiful things that we as human beings value. It's not just IQ. You're taking this atheistic argument, which is baffling to me. Why you as a Christian would have this kind of IQ fetishism? You're not a white nationalist. IQ is not the end all be all of human existence. I am happy, I'm fine with having a 90 average IQ country that abides by traditional values, that abides by whether they be Christian or Muslim. I actually prefer the low IQ Christian countries that value marriage. They don't have degeneracy. They don't have prostitution. I value those Christian countries even when they have a lower IQ, a 90 IQ, that's beautiful. They're living beautiful lives. Yeah, you can make fun of them. Oh, they have donkeys pulling their carts. You can laugh, but they're living beautiful lives as Christians or as Muslims or any other religious group.
Well, I guess ignorance really is bliss.
Yeah, I think he's got a great point, and I think he's pretty much won the debate at this point.
Yeah, and I think that Andrew Wilson's last statement there, I agree with. Unfortunately, it applies to him, not the other guy.
Yeah.
Ignorance is bliss, and you're the ignorant one, apparently.
Yeah, you're being ignorant right now.
You have no answers to anything that he said.
He's just going to turn around and say, yeah, but you like to have sex with your cousin, see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all he's got. One trick pony, man.
Yeah.
Experience Brazil with a journey designed just for you. Handcrafted tours.
I'll probably have to go and
expert-led adventures.
Yeah. This is about over. I think
luxury.
Yeah, we pretty much did the whole thing, really. You guys want to stop it here? Because
I don't know where else they could go with this.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like Andrew's ever going to come back with anything else. So
yeah,
I think the Muslim guy won.
Yeah,
I think he won the debate. I think that he would get destroyed by a rational secularist. Rational secularist. I think I said that right. Because everything he's advocating for is not demonstrably better. It's only better according to his worldview. But if your worldview is false, then you have no foundation for something being better or not. You don't have any objective metrics, All the objective metrics of what makes a society better are on the side of the secularist, not the religious person, whether they're Muslim or Christian.
I think Andrew Wilson would definitely lose to a secular argument. As far as the Muslim, I could imagine him saying, well, our values have different starting points. So they're going to obviously end up at different places. So you're going to have to do an internal critique in order to make your point land here. But the secularist will not do that because the secularist rejects that religion, first of all. So it kind of misses the point. And then if you'd want to go that way, then you're kind of changing topic at that point. Then it would be like, well, is Islam true?
I don't do internal critiques of Islam. I only ever do external critiques of it because I have no reason to do an internal critique until you can convince me that, that I have to give me a reason to do an internal critique. They want you to do an internal critique because if you do an external critique, all the objective metrics are on the side against Islam, right?
Yes.
So I never grant them that. I never say I'm doing an internal critique of your religion. Here's how your religion is internally incoherent or inconsistent with its own values. No, I don't do that. I just say your values are shit. Show in an objective way how they're good in a way that you can demonstrate, and you can't do it.
Right.
Muslims hate that, With Christians, I can sometimes do an internal critique, one, because I know the religion a little bit more and I know the Bible a little bit more. And so sometimes I'm willing to grant certain premises to show how it's internally incoherent and contradictory and logically inconsistent and untenable. That's the way that I destroy Christianity oftentimes, is by doing an internal critique. But I can do an external critique too. The external critique is kind of the low-hanging fruit. It's easier to do, because the burden of proof is on the religious person. Always, they can't demonstrate that the foundation for their belief even exists, but I can even grant that. Let's say that there is a God. Let's say that some of the Bible is true. How do you know which parts are true and which parts are not? And what about these parts that contradict that part? And that's where Christians get screwed. That's a more entertaining part of the debate to have with Christians. I can't do it with Islam because I don't know the Quran as well. And also I wouldn't do it with Muslims because they don't have any, I shouldn't say Muslims, but people who are devoutly Muslims and very much into the Quran, like this guy, who reject secularism and, who have these extreme views. I wouldn't even attempt to do an internal critique because the external critique is sufficient. I have enough data points to show why your religion is more harmful.
Yeah, exactly. And, internal critiques are very powerful, especially with dismantling Christian arguments, because you have so much material to work with. You've got so many examples of contradictions and tensions and things of that nature. You don't even have to do an external critique, like you say. You could, it'd be the easy way to do it. But again, if you're dealing with a precept, they'll just say, well, I'm starting with the Bible, so I just reject starting outside of the Bible. But then what they turn around and do is they won't let you do the internal critique because they don't want to go there.
I don't debate precepts ever because that's presuppositional apologetics is verbal masturbation. These are not arguments designed to convince anyone who doesn't already believe. And so it's kind of a waste of time. The only reason they exist is to avoid actually making an argument for what you believe in. You just accuse everyone else of already knowing that what you believe is true. Therefore, you don't have to make an argument. It's to get away from their burden of proof because they can't make it, right? So I don't even attempt to debate them. Now, to be fair to most Christians, I don't think most Christians are precepts. I think that that's a subset of Christianity. Most of them actually will try to debate and don't presuppose things and will appeal to things like faith and all other kinds of nonsense. But I will engage with them and I will do internal critiques with them because I find it more effective at helping people deconstruct, An external critique of someone's religion isn't going to be as effective helping them deconstruct, especially if they're really indoctrinated into it. You can tell them all the reasons why Christianity is not true, the Bible is not true, the global flood didn't happen, evolution. You can show them all that stuff, but if they start with the Word of God and the Holy Spirit, then you can't break free that way. But if you can go into the Bible and show them the contradictions, show them Jesus is not the Messiah. He failed his own predictions. He's not coming back. He was supposed to come back in the lifetime of his disciples. He lied when he said no one is ascended to heaven except the one who's from heaven. We can go to the Old Testament and see Elijah ascending to heaven. This book has tons of contradictions. It says God can't change, but here we see him changing. We see him relenting. But if you can show them that their baseline, which is the Bible, doesn't make any sense and has internal contradictions which they can't resolve, I find that to be much more effective at getting them to think maybe there's some problems with this. If all scripture is God breathed and useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, why does it have all these problems? Why can't I resolve some of these contradictions? It shouldn't be contradictory this way. Why are there so many different denominations of Christianity? Why do we have different doctrines about salvation? Is salvation by faith? Is it by works? Paul says it's by faith. James says it's by works. Jesus says it's by faith in John, but he says it's by works in the Synoptic Gospels. What's the truth? And so if you can get them to do that, that's why I use that method with Christians more often.
And the last time you were on the channel, we had that whole conversation you were pointing out about Paul and how really Paul was a rebel. Like he just jumped in there and just declared himself one of the,
the apostles.
Right. Like he just said, fuck you, I'm an apostle now.
Yeah. I don't think he used those words, but
no, of course not.
Yeah.
But he was violent. He was a very violent person. He was very disagreeable. Like you can tell, he was very argumentative in his letters to the Galatians and to the Corinthians, and it was just so. How can you base his text and expect them to really harmonize with other parts of the Bible? Like you said, the letters of James, like. Of course, they're going to be contradictory because they're supposed.
I think Sophia has to go, so
okay.
She's trying to bring.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt, but yeah.
No, you're fine.
Okay,
it was nice meeting you,
Good to meet you.
Bryce.
Yeah.
Hope to see you again soon, and great show,
next
Scott.
weekend.
Yep.
All right.
Next weekend we'll do it.
All right.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Yep. Go ahead, wrap up what you were saying because I'm gonna.
I was just going to say it's easy, but even if you have a model that's internally consistent all the way through and through, it doesn't really prove anything because the way I just like the scientific modeling, and I think this is the philosophy of science that pretty much says this, that every model is based on at least one assumption. So the theory itself can't prove the assumption that goes into the theory. That's why you go outside of the theory to explain. And even if you do that, that leads to another, axiom that you have to prove. And so even if you could do, and it goes on infinitum, I think it's called Gödel's theorem, So even if, religions come up with perfectly, consistent, internally consistent models, it doesn't really prove its truthfulness, though.
No, and this is where, and that's when I would be debating with a Muslim, because I do think that Islam is more internally coherent than Christianity is. The problem isn't the lack of internal coherence, although I'm sure if I dug deeper enough, I could find problem areas, but I don't waste my time with that because the bigger issue is, do we have a good reason to think that any of this is true?
Right.
So if someone has been telling, it's like the telephone game, if I tell you, if I'm the first person in the telephone game and I whisper to the next person, my dog can fly, and then he whispers it to 1,000 people, let's pretend that the message stayed the same that entire time. It's not going to, but if we pretended that it was completely consistent, there were no deviations, and the entire statement has been consistent from beginning to end, does that tell you that the statement is true? Can my dog fly?
No, not at all.
My dog can't fucking fly, right?
No,
if the first thing that was said was a lie, you have no reason to believe the last thing that was said. And saying, well, it's been consistent this whole time, who gives a shit? If it's consistently wrong the whole time, then it's consistently wrong,
Exactly.
This is what Muslims try to do, is the way they attack Christianity is by pointing out all the deviations using the telephone game. And that is correct because there will be deviations, so Christians have that extra problem to solve. But consistency alone and internal coherence alone does not mean true. It also doesn't mean good. That's the other problem with Islam. Well, all religions mostly, but especially Islam. It doesn't prove that this is good. According to Islam, you can kill gay people, and it's been consistent from the beginning. Cool. Now demonstrate how that's good. Well, because God said so. Demonstrate that your God is good and not a Descartes' deceptive demon. And they can't do that, you know.
Can't do it. Not at all.
But I can show you how it's bad.
Right,
What if I accuse you of being gay? How do we know you're not gay? Maybe you should be thrown off a building. I'm not gay. I'm married to a woman. No, that's a cover. You're gay. You know. See, this is why it's bad to live in a society like that.
Yeah, and if you can show how perspectives can at least cast doubt on your framing, your framework, then you have enough reason to doubt, and then that's good enough to withhold conclusions about those things, because until you're able to rule out all the other possible explanations for something, then they remain, right? And then if they remain, then it's what you call underdetermined. And if it's underdetermined, then all you've got is your opinion about which one you like the best over which other one. But that gets you nowhere. That's just your psychological state at work. So,
I think there's another psychological factor with a lot of Muslims in the fact that, if you're raised in an Islamic society and you're deeply bought into it, you have an incentive to stay in it, even if you start to doubt, So you have much more of an incentive to stay in Islam even than any other religion. Maybe Jehovah's Witnesses, they come close as well, but there's these built-in incentives. Don't ever use skepticism to doubt this religion or leave the religion, because it'll be bad for you if you do.
Yeah, and all of the things that a Muslim or your more popular Christian would use as a value or a virtue, Jehovah's Witnesses would look at that's the weakness of your religion. Like the fact that you are part of the world, that you are trying to make it a better world. That's not what it's about. We're supposed to be ready for the end of this world. There's nothing about this world we should try to salvage. We're here to wait for Jesus Christ to come and end this system.
By the way, you say that's the Jehovah's Witness perspective. This really is the biblical perspective. I mean, Paul teaches this, Paul is like, you shouldn't get married. You should remain single. You shouldn't try to have a family. The world's going to end. You should be doing God's work. This is the Christian message. They don't know their Bible.
They don't know the Bible.
They don't care what it says.
Absolutely, man.
So go ahead and end your show so that, that I can go, and the audience, hopefully they haven't left yet, but I know you need to end the show.
Yep. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, but man, thank you so much for joining. Next weekend, we're going to look at Mr. Marquette and discover his little form of madness and see what we can draw from that. And I think you're going to love this one, knowing you, Bryce. I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So until next week, guys, thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you then. So peace out.